Now we can start. No.
We'll call the Cañuite County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. The first order of business is to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Cañuite County Board meeting and election day. It's a long agenda, which we'll approve in just a moment, but I promise we'll get you out of here before the polls close tonight, so you can get on the vote if you haven't done so already. The first item of business is to approve the agenda. If there's anything you want to pull from the consent agenda at this point, now is the time to do it. Hearing none, all in favor of the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The consent agenda includes approval of the October 15th board meeting minutes that you received in your packet, the approval of the auditor's warrants and claims, which you also received in your packet, and then the approval of the West Central Industries contract, Southwest Services Southwest Adult Mental Health Consortium, discretionary monies employment agreement. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Dwayne Anderson moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Under general business, welcome Dr. Chos. You are first on the agenda.
Thank you. My apologies for being a little tardy.
You are right
From a
on.
meeting and to another. Well, thank you, everybody. I'd love to just be here and talk about Woodland Centers and what we do. Oh,
For the record and those that are watching, state your name and who you represent.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, I am Ashley Chos. I am the executive director at Woodland Centers. So I just love to come every year, talk about what we do, answer any questions you might have about our agency or about mental health, substance use in general in the community, if I can answer those questions. So just a few, I sent you all some information just to give you an overview of where we've been, what we've been doing. So in March of 2024, we started to implement a system called Mira. It's a measurement-based care platform. And really what this does is it helps us automate a lot of the assessments that we do for our clients. We do a lot of screening, a lot of monitoring for our clients as a CCBHC, and this really automated that process for us. And then the other side of the coin is our staff then get those assessments and we can use them in real time with our clients to be able to talk about their care, talk about their treatment plan, and maybe augment their treatment plan based off of what they're reporting back. And so since April 1 through August 30th, we've sent out over 11,000 assessments. So we assess a lot for people. And then we've had a 63% completion rate. This is a new system. And so we're hoping to get that up higher, but helping our clients understand what it is and really getting them to use this in part falls on us as providers to then use that data in the session with those clients. So the next was 54% of all measures have been viewed. Again, our goal here is at least 70%. So we're working on increasing that because the more our staff use this data, the more meaningful it will be for our clients as well. So one of the pieces we're always looking at is treatment response. Are we being effective in how we're delivering care? So the PHQ-9 is a depression inventory. If you've been to your doctor, there's 9 questions they ask you of, have you felt sad in the past 2 weeks? Have you lost interest or pleasure in activities? 9 questions. You get it at your doctor, you get it at Woodland Centers. And so we use that data to say, are we effectively managing depression care? And so here you can see 66.4% of treatment response rate was a positive rate. So we are seeing a reduction in that PHQ-9 score. So this is useful for us to say, is what we're doing effective? Are we having an impact? So that's what we're hoping to use this data for more over time. Do you have any questions on that? That's a lot to spit out in just a few minutes of Mira. So
my question is, how do you get such a high rate? I mean, 63% is pretty good for, is it when they're sitting there and you have them fill it out, or?
So it's over time. So we can see it over time. So anything over a 12, so the score goes from 0 to 27. Anything over a 12 is considered clinically a high
But
score.
what I'm getting at is you got a 63%
Mhm.
completion rate of that.
Right.
So
Yes. So what we're seeing then is that over time of treatment, over this period of time, that they are reducing their PHQ-9 score after they've had treatment. So it's not like they do the assessment and then 2 weeks. We do it every 2 weeks. So we can see that score every 2 weeks to see if what we're doing is effective. Does that kind of answer your question?
well, you sent out 11,800 assessments and
Right.
you have 63%. So maybe I'm misunderstanding what you mean by completion.
Oh, so the 63% completion rate. So of the 11,000, yeah, only 63% were actually completed by the clients. So we have quite a few that were not even completed. So we are missing some data, which is problematic.
Yeah.
Of those that
But that's still a pretty good completion rate for
It's
most people.
not where we want to be, but
All right.
it's a good start. Yeah, it's a good start. Absolutely. As you all know, we closed our detox unit in November of 2023, so it's been about a year. We did begin the remodel of our crisis units. The plan is to take the old detox unit and make more beds and move that, actually our adult unit, into that space. So we'd have 3 more adult beds and then expand our youth unit. So we'd have another bed in there. We were slowed down a bit through the remodel with Department of Health and needing to get some updated licensing reviews and things like that from Department of Health. So we're in the process right now. We have a construction company ready to go. We just need the A-OK from the Department of Health to move ahead with that project. So hoping to get some of that wrapped up this year. I have been meeting with social service agencies, law enforcement over this last year, and just asking questions of how's it going since we closed detox? Are you noticing any holes, any gaps? And resoundingly, the answer has been no. They're finding placement. Things have been going okay. I'm sure there's a situation here or there, but it hasn't been a huge gap. It sounds like for most of our communities to not have detox here. We have our mental health urgent care, and we've seen a lot of increased use in this. So this is kind of an expansion of our mobile crisis unit. So essentially, we have our mobile crisis team that can go out in the community, see everybody where they are. Not everybody wants us to come to their home. Not everybody wants us to come to them. They'd rather just stop in when it's convenient for them. And so urgent care allows that. People know what urgent care is. You come in, you get seen, you go home. And that essentially is what we've created for mental health. It's also been very helpful for law enforcement. We've had more law enforcement using this service to be able to just drop somebody with us and say, we just want this person needs to be checked out. We think there's some mental health concerns going on. Can you guys, excuse me, can you guys just evaluate them and see what's going on? And so urgent care has been a really good resource for that as well. And so you can see over 2023 and 2024 with utilization there. Assessments, this is the initial assessment. The initial time we see somebody, it's about an hour-long assessment typically, just to kind of figure out what's going on for this person, what are their needs, and we've seen a 56% increase from 2023 to 2024. We've also seen a 21% increase in stabilization. So people that have had an assessment but still need some follow-up care, they can come into our urgent care as well and receive that service. So when we combine all of the things together, it's about a 20% increase in total utilization for our urgent care program. Any questions on that? It's very useful, and we're very happy to have it. I think it's been a need in our communities, and we're doing it across all of our counties. So anywhere we have an office, of course, Candy, Ohio is probably the highest utilized because just the office space here.
So the Madison location is the location for the western part of the region, and then Wilmer would be the other one, or is there more than one in the western part of the region?
Question. So every one of our office locations is an urgent care as well. So when the offices are open, we can have our care coordinator set that person up with a Zoom, or else our staff will come out and meet with them. Sometimes it's a little bit of a wait if our staff have to drive there. But one of our mobile team members is located in Benson 3 or 4 days a week. And so if somebody walks in there, she can see them for an urgent care. So we have 7 locations with our offices. And then we added the Mercantile in Madison because our Lackapaw office is only open 2 days a week. So it gives us another avenue to see folks. And there's people coming in there all the time. So it's a really nice way for us to just be in the community and have another space.
Okay. So Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So Then there's one in Cosmos. I know it's not in Candida County, but it's
Yes.
close to me.
Yeah.
Is that open 5 days a week or how?
It is.
Really?
Cosmos is a little bit different though, because that is actually just housing our assertive community treatment team down there. And so we don't really provide any service out of that office. It's really a lot of the staff doing services or coming in there, having team meetings. Sometimes clients come in to see, but it's really that team. It's the ACP team. And they have a caseload of up to 45 clients across Renville, Meeker, and McLeod counties.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a different office space.
Okay.
But that is open 5 days a week.
Okay.
Question. Woodland Center's also applied for, and we've now been accepted for the substance use 115 waiver. This is a requirement for all outpatient and residential substance use providers. It essentially ensures that we're meeting the ASAM criteria, which is national criteria for substance use care, and making sure that we're doing appropriate referrals. Again, we're only an outpatient facility, so if somebody needs residential, how do we have those connections? Because there's different levels of residential care. So this is just assuring that we are providing those levels of care or referrals if needed.
Where do they go if they need inpatient?
Good question. It's all over the state, honestly. A lot of our referrals go to Project Turnabout. Vinland, which is down by the metro, they're the only provider in the state that does residential substance use for people with traumatic brain injuries or developmental delays. And so anybody with those issues, we send to Vinland. Otherwise, it's really based on client choice. So if they prefer a certain treatment center, we try to get them there. Sometimes it's client choice because it's the fastest one that can get them in. So it just depends, but we do send people all over.
And is there adequate capacity?
No. There could be more residential beds for substance use, for mental health, and we could keep them full. There's actually been, for the substance use side, we've had more residential substance use providers closing in the last couple of years than opening because of the rates and people not being able to sustain keeping their doors open. So we're seeing more and more closures, which now is increasing the difficulties with capacity and meeting the needs. Yeah, it's challenging for sure. Woodland Center's hired a chief technology officer for as long as I can remember. We've had about 1.5 FTE of IT support. As we've added more technology, more things, we've just needed more support. And so this person comes with a lot of experience helping us with security, privacy, just really getting us up to speed with everything we need for technology. So been a lot of work, and he's presented to our board a little bit about some of the things he's doing, but we're very excited to be able to just keep moving us in a future direction of just being more secure, being more safe, but also giving more features to our staff to do their work more efficiently. The next piece is also technology. There's a lot of tech in here. We're adding Afia, which is a technology platform. We collect our data and store our data in so many places. So we've added Mira, which has its own data. We have our electronic health record. We have our HR and payroll pieces. And so Afia is a platform that will help pull all of this together so that we can really look at our data and analyze it and be able to use it to make better decisions. So we're working on implementing that right now. We'll be rolling that out here probably by the end of this month, at least initially, and then adding more features as we go. So this should help us with reporting, but also just internally with making some decisions. So excited about that as well. Substance use assessments. So as we talk about substance use, so we are now in most of the local jails doing substance use assessments, and then we do treatment coordination. So we do the assessment, and then we help them find their placement. And again, it's client choice on that. So if they're saying, even if we say you need residential treatment, and they're like, oh, I just want to do outpatient, unless they're court ordered, of course. Oftentimes we will help them find whatever level of care they're requesting. And it might mean it takes a little bit because there's a bed shortage. So even if they want to go to Project Turnabout, but it's a 6-month wait, now we look for another place so we can get them in sooner. So that's part of what we're doing. We have scheduled times, excuse me, in some of the jails. So for Candy, Ohio, for example, on Tuesdays, we have 3 hours and they fill up our slots and we see whoever we can see. In some of the jails that are smaller, they call us and say, hey, we got somebody when can you get them in? So it just depends on the size of the jail and what their needs are. But I do have some of the data here so you can see it. 2023, we did 67 assessments. In 2024, just in the first 8 months, we did 54. So it's growing. There's a growing need, and we know, especially in these jails where people are sitting, if this is what they're waiting for, sometimes for release, we can help relieve that jail so that they can get to where they need to go for treatment instead of sitting and waiting. So it's been helpful for us, but also for the jails.
So what is the biggest barrier? You mentioned, I think I've heard you say twice now that residential treatment is in high demand. What's the biggest barrier to increasing or even operating a residential treatment facility?
There's quite a few. One of them is there's not enough LADCs across the state. In 245G, which is the statute that covers that, only licensed alcohol drug counselors can provide the care and the treatment. And there's just not enough of them to go around. Like we could hire a few more, even just on our outpatient level, and keep them busy. The other piece is the reimbursement level. A lot of folks are struggling with one, they have to enter this 115 waiver, which adds extra burden, and the payment for that does not keep up with how much it costs and the extra that goes into providing that care. So it's a few pieces, I would say, but it's not the referrals. There's plenty of referrals. It's not having adequate staff and not having enough reimbursement to cover the costs.
So if Woodland refers somebody out to, and they go to a residential treatment center, say that Vinland or Project Turnabout, and that person is either on Medicare or MNsure, or are there costs associated beyond what is covered, and who covers them? For example, is it the county of which your residents, or how does that work?
Every insurance is a little different. So I would say if they're Medicaid, Medicaid covers their treatment. If they're not Medicaid, we can also apply for the Behavioral Health Fund. And so depending on their income and their dependents, it may be covered by what is called the Behavioral Health Fund, which is kind of like a Medicaid specific for SUD. If they are not covered under the Behavioral Health Fund or Medicaid, they pay out of pocket.
And if they're unable to pay,
then they're unable to attend. A lot of the treatment facilities we have found, we have a really great working relationship with all of our counties as far as when we fill out an assessment, we get the counties the information for the Behavioral Health Fund, and they're very fast to respond with that, what we call the double digit span. And so we can know that they're eligible. Other counties are not as fast. And so a lot of treatment centers will not accept a client until they know the funding source. So that can also be a barrier. So if that fund gets held up of just approval for the fund, that can hold them up from care. If they're denied that because they have excess income, but they don't have insurance or they don't have a way to pay for it, the treatment centers are denying because they need to get paid. So that's another barrier for people that have private commercial insurance that maybe can't afford that level of care because it's not cheap. It is not cheap. When you talk about like a Hazelton, it's a national company and well known. You could be looking at $30,000 to $40,000 for a month stay. So it's good care, but it's not cheap. So yeah, it's a barrier for sure.
thank you.
Mhm. Another AI tool or another technology tool that we're implementing, we just started with Ilios, which is an AI technology. We started in August. This essentially sits in the background of our therapy sessions, of honestly some of our community-based sessions if we're using Zoom. And it's really kind of like a secretary for all of our staff. It doesn't record the session. It essentially takes notes and summarizes what was talked about. And it sits in our electronic health records. So staff can then go in at the end of the day or after that session and see the summary or the notes that Helios collected and say, is that accurate? Is it not? Do I want to use that? And they can use that to help build their notes. And then the big caveat with this is it does not replace our staff. They still have to review the information. They have to edit the information and make sure it is accurate for what is being discussed. But as in the first 1.5 months, we have 97 live users. I think as of right now, we have like 105. We've completed over 3,800 notes using Ilios. And the average time to complete a note, just as far as industry average, it takes about 15 minutes to do every single note. After implementation, the average time using the audio version, where it's sitting and listening in the session, was down to 3 minutes. That's huge. That's so much time back for our staff. So it's about an 80% reduction. We also have a non-audio version. Essentially, if you're out in the community meeting with a client in their home, after that session, you can put in bullet points into Elios and say, here's the things we talked about, and it will give you suggestions based on that. So it's what we call a non-audio version. And that was down to 7 minutes. And that's still learning. Essentially, this AI learns as staff use it, and we think that number will improve as well. But it's still 47% reduction in time for every single note. That's significant. And we've talked to our staff about this is about self-care for our staff. Burnout is huge across the industry, as everybody knows. And so how can we give our staff a little bit of time back? Nobody went into this industry to say, I want to do paperwork and I just love writing notes. Like they just don't. And so, but it's an important part, right? It's documenting what has happened and how we're taking care of our clients. And so this is a tool that we've implemented for our staff to just give them time back, essentially. Any questions about that? AI is a hot topic right now, I know. So if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
It's also viewed with a level of perhaps healthy skepticism. So how do you, as a team, sort that out? Do you kind of meet and say, okay, it's been working well, there's no problems, or I think in these areas it could be improved? How do you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Elios actually does collect feedback from our staff. So every 3 to 4 sessions, there'll just be a little note at the end to say, how's it going? What's your feedback? And they actually give that to us as well as their own team. And we have been able to take that and say, we need to tweak it here or tweak it there. Overall, staff have said this has been life-changing. And usually when I hear it's life-changing from staff, like it's not always a good thing, but they're saying this has been amazing. This has helped us so much. This tool is very useful. I think the piece with this is we did a lot of upfront work to say, how does this system work? Who owns the data? How long is the data there? And that's all super important questions before you implement anything related to AI, because we are dealing with healthcare. We're dealing with very sensitive data, and it really is not kept, which was really important to us, that this is not kept data. There's nothing stored anywhere. So those are all some really important questions we did in the forefront.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to comment too. This is going to be, if it's not yet, it's going to be mainstream. But, you go to Carousel, they're using AI, and this is going to be mainstream in so many other ways too. But kudos to Woodland Centers to being on top of it and get in doing this right away. I mean, everybody hates paperwork, and this way it's actually so accurate in more ways than one. So no, thank you for doing that.
That's exciting.
Somehow I am not surprised that it's Commissioner Berg that is championing the technology.
Yeah. Yeah, AI is definitely here to stay, and it's using it in a healthy way and in a skeptic way, right? Of making sure you know what you're using and what you're using it for, and educating ourselves, because there's a lot out there. There's a lot out there for sure. As of September 1, 2024, we did discontinue our behavioral health home services. If you're familiar with this, we started this program in 2016. It's really an intensive care coordination model for people who have medical conditions and mental health conditions. And the reason why we discontinued it, one, was because financially it was not viable to continue this program anymore. But under CCBHC, we were required to do more integrated care as far as medical components. So we essentially just took this team and pivoted it to become our care coordination team for medical pieces under CCBHC. And so it falls under that model of care now. So it was really a pivot for us versus a discontinuation of a service. People who are our clients that are receiving behavioral health home services really didn't feel any shift. The staff are still doing all of the same care coordination they did under that. It just really shifted us to decertify that program and move them under CCBHC. So if you're hearing more about that, again, happy to answer any questions. It was really a pivot for us. And then in September, we also had to make the decision to close our adolescent day treatment program. We had this program running for a few years. Over the last year, we just have not seen the referrals coming. This was an after-school program, 3 hours a day, 4 days a week for a lot of adolescents. That's a big commitment, especially when you have activities and family events, things happening. It was really hard to get people here, and it was in person. And so it was just challenging. So we've just seen a reduction in referrals for that. What we have seen is an increase in referrals for a lot of our outpatient programs related to adolescents. So we have 1 day a week, 2 to 3 hour groups for these kiddos, and they're attending more of those. So it's 1 day a week versus 4, and it just makes it more feasible for families to be able to do that. In January 2025, we're adding a Spanish-speaking substance use disorder group. I believe at our last meeting, somebody said we had about 15 referrals already. So it's exciting to be able to offer that. We have an LADC, a licensed alcohol drug counselor, who speaks Spanish, so she'll be able to facilitate this group. She writes her notes in English and Spanish as well, so our clients can read them and understand what's happening with their care. But we're really excited to be able to offer this. It will be hybrid, so people from other communities can come virtually or in person if they would so choose. And then I talked a little bit about this under CCBHC. There's some new standards of medical screening and monitoring, and this is why we converted our VHH team. But it's really about us looking at all of these different medical pieces for our clients and ensuring that they're getting the care they need. And then we are required as a CCBHC to ensure that they're getting the labs that they need, to ensure that they're getting any of the chronic health indicators that they have, that we're monitoring that and referring them appropriately to their primary care, to their specialty care. So again, we're building a team to be able to do that care coordination, because it really is a unique model that we're trying to build. And that takes effect January 1. And then we had art events held in our Meeker, Swift, Renville, Chippewa, Lackaparra, and Big Stone counties. And this was one to just build that community, have people come paint with us. We know that art and expression are really valuable pieces to mental health and mental wellness. And it was really great events for our staff to be able to get out and meet with our clients and hear their stories. A lot of people came and painted with our staff and said, you've saved my life, or you've saved my friend's life, or I get my treatment here and this has been really important to me. So I think for our staff, just to hear those stories every day is a really important piece. And then I added the picture there so you can see our mural. If you want to drive by our office, you can also see those pieces that were added to the mural in front of what used to be bleak gray wall. It's now beautiful. And all of our counties contributed to that wonderful piece of art and our clients. So it's been a really fun experience to be able to do that across our communities. And then our purchase of service contract. Do you guys have any questions on anything I've talked about so far? All right, purchase of service contract for 2025. I just have kind of an overview of what this contract covers. It really is about providing services that the counties are required to provide as the mental health authority. And so the services are in there. So education, prevention, outreach, emergency crisis services, outpatient services, which includes therapy, assessment, psychiatry, and then community support program, which is our adult and our youth day treatment programs. The only piece that is included in there that is not necessarily mandated by being the mental health authority is our youth crisis center. Youth crisis is not covered by any other payer source besides our counties. We are one of 2 in the entire state. We are the oldest one in the entire state, and now there's a 3rd one. And I don't know if you heard, but Hennepin County passed that they're building a youth crisis center. So there'll be 3 of us across the state, but there's really no funding source other than our county. So we do have a line in the purchase of service contract to help cover some of the costs to provide that care. And so this year for 2025, we're proposing a 2% increase. And this is really just to keep up with the costs, inflation costs, salary costs for our staff. And then a 2% increase in the rates for crisis and detox.
Any questions for Dr. Schultz? Well, thank you. You must have practiced that because you are exactly on time. My responsibility today is to kind of keep us moving because of the long agenda. So thank you very much.
Thank you all for your support. I appreciate it.
And segueing from there into the purchases services agreement is Caroline Kahn.
Good
Welcome.
morning. Caroline Kahn, the Director of Health and Human Services for Candy-Ojai County. Thanks to Dr. Schultz for doing my job for me and explaining the purchase of service contract that I have in front of you today. So we are requesting is board action to approve our 2025 purchase of service contract that, again, lays out the portion of Candy-Ojai County's financial investment into the services provided to our community as the mental health authority.
And I assume staff is recommending this.
Staff is recommending, excuse me, it feels like a Monday morning, recommending to do the 2% increase of the purchase of service contract.
So we've heard the recommendation from staff on the contract. How do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I move the recommendation of staff regarding the Woodland Center's purchase of services agreement.
Commissioner Gardner moves on the Woodland Center's purchase of services agreement. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second that.
Commissioner Berg seconds. Any discussion?
Yes. Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Berg.
I'd like to make a couple comments. Commissioner Gardner and myself haven't asked you too many questions. For everybody's information, we both serve on the board currently for Woodland Centers. But I also would like to add about Woodland Centers. Kansas County, Dr. Schultz, you mentioned that we're the mental health authority, and we have relied on Woodland Center's Mental Health Center for many, many years. And I've for those services that need to be provided locally. And I know that there's a lot of need for mental health services, and especially even more now than in the last couple of decades, in a sense, that the continuum of care. But everything possible we can do locally with the money we get, Woodland Centers is just evolving. And I've seen over 50 years Woodland Centers evolve, trying to meet the needs of our community and how it changes for mental health care. It does change greatly, and the different kinds of services. For example, the children's day treatment type of thing has changed because there's a reason for that, or detox and so forth. So those things do happen. Like Woodland Centers over the years has done an excellent job of providing those services and moving on. And we do serve on the board, and I certainly support this increase. I think it's very reasonable, and I think we got a bargain with Woodland Centers in our community.
Thank you, Commissioner Berg. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, now we're gonna have a tag team discussing the Justice Involved Opioid Response and Prevention Network update.
Well, we might have to get creative today. Good morning again. I'm Caroline Kahn, the Director of Health and Human Services for Katy Ojai County.
Good morning, Dr. Tammy Jo Lieberg, Community Corrections Director.
This morning, we wanted to just provide an update on a grant that we talked to you about earlier in 2024 related to our Justice Involved Opioid Response and Prevention Network grant that we submitted to the ORAC committee at the state of Minnesota.
Excuse me, we're not able to, or I'm not able to load mine. Can you load yours, the attachment?
I couldn't find the, let me pop it up. Give me 2 seconds to grab it.
Oh, there we go. It was expanded well beyond my screen, so now when I bring it in, I got it. Thank you.
I don't have, it's not on the piece, so. Could we have the camera just show our screen? You can pop it up for us?
Yes, if you want to start, I'll do it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sorry
Just
for
to give
interrupting.
a recap of the multidisciplinary team that we've pulled together at Katy Ojai County. This team at the beginning and continues to involve our Katy Ojai County Sheriff Eric Tollefson, our County Attorney Shane Baker, our Community Corrections Director Tammy Jo Lieberg, Kelsey Baker, our Administrator, myself, and then I do have one typo that was in the board packet. Corinne Torkelson was our Adult Mental Health and Adult Protection Supervisor at Katy Ojai County Health and Human Services, and now that she has retired, she was carrying this baton, and now that she has retired, Megan Knott, her replacement, will be helping carry us this baton forward. So that should say Corinne Torkelson / Megan Knott, and then myself.
So we'll just do a quick grant recap to enhance rural justice coordination and community response to address mental health issues. We added 2 critical staff positions to address substance abuse and provide management for individuals with involved drug offenses, 1 in community corrections and 1 in social services. These positions work closely with involved departments, disciplinary team to establish an early engagement model for substance mental health related encounters and provide coordinated services. We were able to add these 2 positions on in both the departments in the last 6 months. We have faced a couple barriers in my department. We jumped in and we were able to hire right away. And sadly to say that we've faced the barrier now that we're rehiring. We're actually going to start with interviews this week to rehire. One of the things that we were able to just jump in and get started, and we had a great person hired. But as we find in many of our positions, it's extremely stressful working with these populations. And the individual that we hired determined that for his own mental health, that because of the stress related to the position, he moved on to a different position. And so we're starting over, but we got a good start with this grant and getting services started in the jail, in our office, and building connections. So we're getting there.
So, as we move on to the project status, this, as Tammy Jo mentioned, the project addressing the pressing issue of opioid misuse and mental health related challenges through a two-pronged approach. As Tammy Jo mentioned, they were able to hire much earlier than the Health and Human Services side, so we were able to invite our position to come on board in July. And if it's all right, I'm going to invite Megan Knott to jump up with us and provide a little bit of a recap of the work being done by the Candy Ojai County Health and Human Services prong.
Good morning. I'm Megan Knott. I joined the leadership team with the adult protection and adult mental health team here at Candy Ojai County just a couple of weeks ago. So just speaking a little bit, yes, we have a position in Health and Human Services. He started in about July. He has a wealth of information coming from working at PLYP, as well as most recently he was working as an adult, child protection investigator here with Candy Ojai County and transitioned into that role. The main focus for Jared, since he started in July, has really been to educate himself in the services that are currently serving this population in Candy Ojai County. We have lots of people that do serve this population of mental health and substance use, specifically opioid, but wanting to gather that data to really figure out how can we best approach that model here in Candy Ojai County, what things are missing. He's also taken some time to introduce himself to partners across the state for similar models that other county agencies are implementing, such as like an emergency response team that talks about a coordinated effort between an integrated social worker and law enforcement as far as how to respond to these people in the community. We just really want to be careful that we're not duplicating the efforts that are being targeted by this population, and just wanting to make sure that we're just making meaningful efforts as far as how to be tactful about this. This is a huge undertaking, and just wanting to make sure that we're being mindful of those things. As far as referrals from the community angle, we get those via law enforcement. It might be that they are reaching out to us to say, gosh, we've had several contacts with this individual. We think they're struggling with mental health, substance use, or a combination of. Could this be something that our person could go out and try and make contact to try and engage them in some sort of voluntary treatment model? And Jared has made, I think, approximately 26 contacts. Again, he feels kind of like, is this right? Is this how this should be going? But I think right now it's just really important that he's just doing data collection. What is going to make the most sense as we try and figure out what the response is to this targeted population? Jared we're trying to do conversations with the hospital, with Woodland Centers, our substance use treatment, just to try and increase our efforts. Again, just wanting to be thoughtful about how we're approaching it. So any questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think one thing that's really exciting is the ability to kind of orchestrate what works for Candy Ojai County. The position that Jared holds has the opportunity within the grant work plan to really take that step back and do an assessment of what's currently available, what's working in other communities, where Tammy Jo's position had the opportunity to really just step right in and start making a meaningful impact with individuals that are justice involved already. So I think the main differentiator is more that justice involvement factor on her side, as well as the community lens factor on the Health and Human Services side, and how can we continue to work together collectively to address this opioid issue locally on a two-pronged approach.
So some of the other things that we were able to implement and we have continued to participate in, where some of the probation officers have stepped back in to take those places, is we're doing cognitive behavioral programming in the jail. We're doing a mindfulness program in the jail, and we're doing a 12-step program in the jail. And these are programs in the jail that don't require people to be on probation. They're open to individuals in the jail through whoever's in our jail program. Some of the barriers we've faced is because so many of our individuals that are local are being housed in Meeker County. instead of in our local jail, we're looking at how do we expand and look at providing some of those programs, maybe even driving over to Meeker County so that we're still impacting some of those transitions. We're doing individual programming and group programming with those individuals as much as we can to make sure that when they're released from the jail, that they have transitioned into the community for mental health, housing, sometimes employment services. They know where they're going, what's happening with those cases, so that they're not just immediately released. In some of those cases, like even yesterday, 2 probation officers went over to the jail. The individual was homeless, and they were able to secure housing for at least for a week until they could find housing somewhere else more permanent.
So, and then as you all are aware, last week we were able to host our first Candiota County Opioid Response Micro Planning Symposium, where we invited up to about 50 neighbors came to that symposium that had never sat at the table together before. So it was a unique opportunity to bring people from all areas of our community in different professions and personal status to really begin that conversation, to come forward with recommendations to you to how do we utilize our opioid settlement funds in conjunction with this other work to really leverage these opportunities to move forward. So we were excited to begin that work. We used this grant as yet another opportunity to help leverage that, to provide some of those structural supports to engage our community in different ways and start to build that advisory council. So I think we're really forethought in how we've crafted this grant project to really keep that in mind, so we maximize dollars moving forward, understanding that our opioid settlement funds were not as robust as some of our neighbors.
So successes to date, coordinating efforts to minimize the impact of substance use issues on various sections of the county and identifying current services. So working together to identify where we need to expand services, analyze those gaps, looking at other areas of the states as Caroline talked about, and looking at how we can address those local responses. We're developing partnerships across all of the different areas, like we talked about with the Sheriff's Department, with social services, with mental health center, through the jail, and through community corrections. And we're expanding those partnerships through substance use providers, health systems, community health action groups, and customized training group programs. Effectively supporting affected individuals through culturally appropriate services, looking at trauma-informed care, and using effective evidence-based models to address these specific needs of these individuals.
I think another area is taking the opportunity to work with these partnerships to identify some of these gaps, knowing that we have some of these salary dollars that we're able to adjust and make a budget work plan adjustment to maybe meet some other community needs, working with our grant partners at the state to do that. So I think that's been very exciting to say, hey, we've identified now that there's a need for additional mental health support within the jails. How do we look at making that and crafting that and utilizing these resources and working with our state partners to coming up with a proposal to adjusting that work plan to meet today's needs as we continue to learn and evolve.
One of the other things that we did is we did a team attendance at the Law Enforcement Mental Health Conference. That included attorneys from the county attorney's office, social workers, probation officers, sheriff's department, our sheriff. We all attended the mental health conference and were able to discuss team approaches. We were able to build connections across the state and the county. For a variety of different things. We have cognitive-based programming in the jail, like I talked about. And one of the interesting things, I was able to actually fill in at one of those cognitive-based programming where, like I said, anybody can come into that programming at the jail. And one day when I was there, when I was filling in, we had an individual that was at the jail that wasn't on probation. It was a pretrial case. And because she was struggling mentally with some different issues, not only were we able to address some of the problems there that day, but I was actually able to call back and talk to her defense attorney. And we were able to actually start a Rule 20 issue because of the fact that she wasn't actually cognizant of what was going on and deal with some of the things happening at the court level as well. So sometimes those things can happen on a larger scale because we're involved at that court or involved in the jail earlier. We have transition planning, like I talked about, and then we also have community education programs that we're working on and building into the community. specialized caseloads, both in social services and in probation, working with these cases and helping develop specific programs for them. Yes, I have one individual story. So, one of the success stories that we talk about, I always like to bring some type of success story and different things. After completing a drug court, we had an individual on probation that was unaware that she had an additional year of probation. During a very emotional meeting that she was very upset about with her probation officer, she learned she had remaining conditions to complete. She was very frustrated. However, she agreed to participate in a mindfulness program and participate in a 12-step program, worked with our law enforcement social worker liaison, and started opening doors and had some unexpected growth. The evidence-based cognitive skills group and different things over the next 12 weeks provided her with new insights and coping strategies. She committed to the program and successfully completed it, reflected on the experience, and then shared with the group her exceeded expectations and expressed deep gratitude for the opportunity, remarking that it was more helpful and she was grateful for the opportunity above and beyond the alcohol and drug treatment program. She transitioned into individual therapy to address past trauma, found and maintained steady employment, and this remarkable success story underscores the transformative power of how this grant funding can make a difference in individual people's lives, and is vital for the success of different people in emotional growth to recovery.
And so as we continue on our grant journey, we maintain our long-term goals of reducing recidivism and incarceration rates among individuals with substance use and mental health needs, continue to provide early engagement with those struggling with such issues, and to establish a well-functioning community-based system of response. So this is an evolving and continual project that we're going to continue to work on, and hopefully will position Kandiyohi County to be the best county to respond to the opioid epidemic moving forward. I'm really grateful for the partnerships that it's involved so far, and that will continue to grow as we continue to do this grant work. Any questions?
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation today. This is a grant-funded program. What is the term of the grant, and does it cover all of the salaries, expenses, so forth?
Correct. So this grant, we got it at the beginning of the year, and it's a 3-year grant with the ability to ask for an additional 2 based on the project status.
So there isn't a direct levy impact of this program at present, but at some point in time, this may grow into, if successful, it may grow into something that might have to be supported by the levy.
Correct, but we're really good at finding various streams. So right now we've been able to utilize this grant to help keep things off of the levy that might otherwise be requested of the levy. So really kind of maximizing things. As we continue to move forward, the ORAC committee keeps putting grant RFPs out. There was one that just published, I think there was $16 million awarded last week that we didn't apply for. So we could always continue to reapply and reinvigorate the way that we address opioid use within our county, as well as the other funding streams that come through. I think the exciting part is the ability to kind of get creative and how can we utilize the resources that are already coming into the county to maybe deploy them differently. But my hope is that if proven successful over time, it would be a no-brainer to do this type of work to lessen our levy cost of jail incarceration, as well as continued health system costs and other impacts that it has on the community.
And these are dollars separate from the dollars that are awarded to Kandiyohi County for the opioid settlement.
Correct. Yeah, these are separate dollars, but similar streams. So our goal as a team is to really get these dollars to go in the same direction, and how do we maximize and leverage different funding streams to make a meaningful impact.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gardner. Dwayne Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So my question would be, do you guys ever look at, I'm just kind of curious about this, the recidivism rate with people that participate in programs like this versus people that refuse to do a program? I mean, is it measurable difference or?
So in corrections, we would, because it's a different population. So this grant, we specifically looked at two different populations, right? Individuals, the social services side is really looking at people that are not involved in corrections, whereas corrections is looking at people that have some type of criminal charge. And so all of corrections, we look at recidivism rates. Now, we don't have a control group like what you're asking for,
Yeah.
but we do have a look at how our recidivism rates are impacted by different programs and where people are successful.
And a lot of the work that we do is in hopes that we never have something to measure.
Yeah.
So I think our success will just vary based off of community impact and those overall numbers changing.
Commissioner Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sitting back and listening to you, both of you going on, I could only think about what a good example of good government when you put this all together. The collaboration. I mean, historically, government was always very good at collaborating, even within their own areas. Each department has its own turf and so forth. And hearing all this collaboration taking place, but not only the collaboration here, but the collaboration in the community and the collaboration across the state and the input from the community, having those meetings for where we meet these needs for the people in our community that need them, and watching taxpayers' dollars at the same time. So thank you both. Very well done.
Yeah, and I just add on to what Commissioner Gardner said, the OREC, and I forget exactly, opiate response.
Opioid epidemic response advisory council.
Thank you. Grant came in. It's kind of another example of what the Association of Minnesota Counties has done. In this case, for Kaneohe County and two other counties that kind of got short shifted on the opiate settlement, and so. At one of the state board meetings, we found awareness of this grant, and it kind of fills a gap that the formula failed us on regarding the opiate settlement dollars. So we appreciate that part of it. And thank you guys for your presentation. We are running about 4 minutes late, but we are going to take a 5-minute break and resume at 7:58. Meeting. Next up on our agenda, and I apologize in advance for the little bit of delay and the late start. Our audit presentation, Doug Host from Clifton Allen Larson. Welcome. And even though I've introduced you, and I see you brought,
the manager on your audit,
Yes.
Liz Mickelson.
okay. So introduce yourselves and who you represent for the record.
I'll start. I'm Doug Host. I'm the principal on your audit from Clifton Larson Allen, and I've been auditing counties for 33 years now.
I'm Liz Mickelson. I am a manager at CLA. I primarily work with local government, cities, and counties exclusively throughout the year.
Welcome.
Thank you. And I know when y'all went to sleep last night, you were all thinking, oh my gosh, tomorrow is going to be one of the most exciting days of the year. For two reasons. One, it's election day, and the audit presentation is going to be here, right?
And if we couldn't sleep last night, we probably will sleep right now, right?
Well, we're going to try. You have heard me present before, haven't you? So we're going to do our best to keep you awake, for sure. But I don't know if the PowerPoint's going to be on the screens.
I can get it.
Okay, well, I'm going to start anyhow, just so we can keep moving. Then Kelsey, you'll catch up.
Okay.
All right, so page 2, because you all have the printed version in front of you. This is what we're going to talk about today. I'll give a brief well, we did the introductions already, and then the audit standards require us to communicate certain things to you and to report on internal controls. The state auditor's office requires us to do some testing of your compliance with state statutes. We'll touch on the results of that. Because you get a lot of federal grants, you need to have what's called a single audit, and we will go over the results of that testing. We'll look at how the county did financially in 23 and then wrap it up.
I'm glad you mentioned that. For anybody listening, this is the 2023.
Correct, yes. And well, I'll touch on it a little bit more. But last year, I don't think we got here until like January, but that was because the state auditors didn't notify you until like January or February after year ends. We only had a short time to get the audit done, but this year you're done by the deadline. So page 5, I believe in your handouts there should be like a 4-page stapled letter. That's really boilerplate. I'll just touch on a few high points. If we encounter any difficulties in performing the audit, we're required to let you know. Well, the letter says we didn't. Actually, the audit in year 2, now that we're auditing you, went much smoother. Next year will go even more smoother. If we have disagreements with management, we're required to communicate that to you. There were none. Staff were just great to work with, and they were kind to the external auditors, and we really appreciate that. So thank you to everyone that we bug a lot. We ask lots of questions, we ask for lots of documents, and then we analyze it, and then we'll have more follow-up questions. And your staff, I love working with everybody here. So thank you to all. We issued a clean opinion on your financial statements, and just a reminder that if you ever use a portion of the report instead of the whole thing, just let me know, because there's a couple T's I got to cross and I's to dot. So with that, I'll turn it over to Liz.
All right. So when we look at the audit over internal control, and we conclude on that, there are 2 levels that we can assess findings at. So the first level is what we call a material weakness. There were 2 items listed under this finding category for 2023. No changes to these 2 items from the 2022 audit. The first one listed there just means that a few of our journal entries that we propose as part of our process met that material threshold to fall in that bucket. The second one indicates that when Clifton Larson Allen prepares your financial statements, there is inherent risk there of self-review. The second bucket of findings is significant deficiencies. So these are slightly less severe than material weaknesses, but we still feel it warrants the attention of governance. Segregation of duties is listed under there, and that primarily relates to those departments where it's maybe one person receiving and reconciling cash. We also, the Office of the State Auditor requires us to go through a series of checklists to monitor compliance with state statutes. There were 2 items we identified through that process where we recommend improvements on. When you look at your ditch fund, you track individual ditches. There were some individual ditches that are running a deficit balance. Not unusual at all for counties, but there are certain statutory requirements when that happens that we recommend looking into. The second one is around electronic fund transfers. So there's a state statute that recommends you at the beginning of the year when you do your annual housekeeping delegations, add a resolution kind of going over who is allowed to initiate EFTs within your banking system and what types of EFTs are allowed. Again, I think that one was a timing issue. When we came in and made that recommendation, it is a fairly new statute as well. So, as Doug mentioned, your federal expenditures for 2023 were over 10.6 million, which is well over the threshold to require a single audit. So, single audits are when we come in and test specific programs for compliance with uniform guidance and we test enough programs to get enough coverage of that 10.6 million. So that did result in 4 programs being tested this year. So highway planning and construction, medical assistance, foster care, and ARPA. So we got to visit quite a few different departments through this process. No material weaknesses identified at all in that testing, that highest threshold. We didn't identify anything there. There were a handful of significant deficiencies. They are listed under the program that they related to there if you want to read through them. I would say the overall theme with these items is really what we like to call in the audit world an audit trail. So we know there are plenty of eyes on these reports that you guys are putting out and reporting to the federal government. But we come in and we need to see that, maybe a physical sign off or an email saying that review was done. So, I would say we worked with the departments that these relate to, kind of worked through process and procedure improvements. So I think we'll see some of those go away next year as well. And then on this slide, I thought it's really important to note that it's the first year we tested foster care here at Candy, Ohio County, as well as ARPA. So when we come out and we start asking questions and support for federal programs for the first time, it's not unusual at all to have some of these findings listed as well.
Then we will, for next year's audit, follow up on these as well. So, and like Liz said, some of them are super easy to rectify where we just need the signature and email that shows us that the reviews were done. So see how it goes next year, but hopefully we'll kind of cut back on some of those items. So we're on page 13. There we go. One of my favorite slides of all the years is, hey, how are your reserves looking? And if you look at the chart itself, it's pretty obvious that there's one word to describe it, and that's consistent and stable over the last 5 years. Now, there's national organizations and the state auditor's office puts out a target that government should have no less than 5 months of reserves. And at the end of 23, you're sitting at 8.6, so above that recommended minimum. So that's at a healthy level and basically no change from the prior year. And considering your expenditures went up 10.5 million because of ARPA projects and more road projects, and unrestricted fund balance went up too. For it to maintain that stability is a pretty neat thing, if you ask me. So, in summary, fund balance levels are stable and healthy. Candy, Ohio County's reserves are sufficient. Next page. We look at where the money or the total revenues and expenditures for the governmental funds, and for the last 5 years, the revenues have exceeded expenditures, and in 23, the revenues were actually up 13.3 million. I'll get into some of the specifics there, as well as at the end of the year, the total revenues were 8.3 million more than expenditures. So that fund balance ratio of 8.6 months really remained unchanged, even though you had increase in expenditures and fund balance. So just super stable. Page 15, we look at where the county's revenues come in for the governmental funds. This doesn't include Glacial Lakes, the enterprise fund. I got a separate slide on that in a little bit, but for the year, revenues were up 13.3 million. There's 3 primary areas. And at the beginning of the audit, we have a planning meeting where we're like, well, what do we expect even before we see any numbers to start auditing? Well, we read the minutes, and I think your levy was up about 3% last year. Does that sound in the ballpark? Well, guess what? Your revenues went up 3%. Property tax revenues went up 3%. We're like, that's right what it should have been. So even though it went up, 900,000, that was expected. The intergovernmental revenues went up for 3 primary reasons. we started to recognize the ARPA revenues, or more of the ARPA revenues, and there was an increase in state grants. 1 second. And the Highway, Road and Bridge Department, they get some federal grants and one's for highway planning and construction. And that saw, gosh, I think it's about $1 million increase over the prior year. So that explains another 3.2 million. And then the last one was a 6.8 million increase in investment income. And that's kind of a big number, but the accounting standards require us to, or the county to report the changes in fair market value of the investments. And those fluctuate. Just if you own any stocks or investments or on in your own portfolios, they fluctuate. Last year it was a negative 2.2 million, which may have seemed a bit alarming, but it's all on paper. So this year the market value's changed a lot. So that increase of 6.8 million is kind of just on paper per se right now, because the county's not going to sell all of its investments at the end of the year. On page 16, we look at where the county's governmental funds expenditures occurred. They were up 10.4 million. The general government area, that's mostly related to the ARPA. The highways and streets, I mentioned there was an increase in highway user tax and federal money. Public safety saw a pretty significant increase. And the primary two main reasons, the contract prices for care of prisoners doubled. So we saw that in the minutes. We're like, we expect that to go up. Well, it did. The other part was due to the Health and Human Services and the law enforcement heat pump replacement or repairs on it. Big costs there. The last big area was sanitation. There's a purchase of a number of new pieces of equipment, and I think the largest one was a compactor for about 600,000. So that accounts for the increases. Now we'll take a closer look at the three big governmental funds. The general fund specifically, for the year, revenues exceeded expenditures by 6.5 million. The general fund all by itself has 8.8 months of reserves, which was up about 1.5 months from the prior year. And in 3 of the last 5 years, the revenues have exceeded expenditures. And the primary reason for the increase in revenues, as I mentioned, was ARPA and investment. Road and Bridge, the expenditures exceeded the revenues by about 739,000. And in 33 years, every road and bridge fund I see is a little bit like a roller coaster, because the timing of when the expenditures are incurred and when the reimbursements come, there's usually a difference there. So it's pretty normal to see fluctuations there. Road and Bridge Fund has 7.9 months of reserve, so that's also above that recommended minimum of 5 months. It was down about 2.2 months from last year, but as you mentioned earlier, there's a lot more projects in 23 than 22. Human Services Fund. In 23, the revenues exceeded expenditures by about 745,000. And truly, this fund, the gap between the revenues and expenditures, if you look at the chart, those 5 years, they're all pretty darn close. And this fund has 6.5 months of reserves at the end of 23. So it is up about 0.4 months and also above the recommended minimum. Page 20, we look at the debt that the county has, and overall, we verified that the debt payments that were due got made and no issues to report there. The biggest changes during the year was special assessment bonds and the enterprise fund were down about 1.2 million. The landfill closure liability is down about 3.2 million. That's based on some assumptions that the state department whoever deals with the landfill. NPC, there we go. Thank you. Yes. All right. There's some changes in assumptions. So no real red flags there. Page 21 is we look at the activity of glacial lakes, and this fund reports on a full accrual basis, unlike your governmental funds, which are on a modified accrual basis. Um, and just a reminder, 2019 was the first year it actually got reported as an enterprise fund, but for the year, revenues exceeded the operating expenses by about 839,000. So a 9% increase in revenues for the year and a 1% decrease in expenses. And if you look at the table, just a reminder back in 2021, I believe this was the case, but we didn't audit yet, but we could find out. There's a bunch of large repairs in 21. So, in summary, this is the second year we audited the county. Cannot wait for the third year because I love this stuff. And because the people are so nice to work with here, it sure makes it easy to love what I do. There's a federal single audit for 23. We audited the 4 programs that Liz mentioned. Every year we do an audit, there's always at least one new accounting standard that needs to be implemented. 23 was no different. It was standard number 96 on subscription-based information technology agreements. And the county staff, I wish y'all would have kept track of how much time you put into getting everything ready for us to audit, but I know it was a lot. Tons of agreements. Lots and lots of thick agreements to go through and see is it something the county's got to report as an asset, these subscriptions with companies for information technology, right? All that time went into it. Then we got to go and audit it and read through the agreements, and it got all said and done, wasn't immaterial for you. So on the bright side, there's a new standard next year you have to work on implementing. And it's related to compensated absences. But there is truly a silver lining. My gut tells me it'll require less staff time to pull that new information together than last year. So I'm feeling pretty confident about that. So, and we'll work with the county staff to get that implemented. But with that, thank you so much for allowing us to serve you. And we got time for questions, if any.
Commissioner Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellent report. Excellent. And I'm feeling really good about it.
Yeah, you should.
Every year you kind of worry about the revenue versus the expenditures. And we've been very stable over the years as it looks. But even though we're very stable, last year, a lot of extra income that we may not have, ARPA and so forth, dollars. So any things as a board that we should be looking for going forward?
You know, the
concerns that, to address. Last time you brought up some concerns to be sure are, salary increases,
Right, I talked about one-time expenses versus stuff that's going to be on the books for next year and forever.
And that still holds too.
Right, it definitely still holds true. But the presentation right before us and always looking for avenues or new grant funding can always be helpful. My daughter's getting her master's at Mankato State, and she's writing grant agreements as part of her graduate program, right? I'm like, that's a valuable skill. It's great to be teaching, the younger people that, but, always keeping your eyes open for possible new money. As when Candy-Ojai County got a little short on the ARPA funding, well, then there's once in a while some supplementary. So just keeping the eyes open. That's the best advice I can give.
I think you meant the opioid funding, but
sorry, yes, my bad. Yep, I got ARPA on the brain today. I don't know. Yeah. Yep.
And any other questions? And I think because of ARPA, you have to keep in mind this is 2023, not 2024. There's still a lot of stuff going on 24, 25, and 26 that is related to ARPA because it has to be spent by the end of 26, I believe, any of the ARPA dollars. So there's still going to be a lot of things going on, and as the Infrastructure and Jobs Act and some of if we have a change in administration, some of these programs might change, and the opportunities might go away or have been expired, regardless of administrative changes.
You bring up the ARPA and Liz, our federal program group, right? Especially when it comes to ARPA, but like memory serves me by 12/31/24, there's got to be some commitment of resources. It can, or yeah, but it can be spent in 25, yeah, but you got to have it allocated, committed. I forget the term, but y'all are aware of that. So that, and so it sounds like we'll be auditing ARPA for the next couple of years. Yeah. So,
I just want to say that it's great to work with CLA. I've worked with Doug now for 8 years, probably.
yeah.
So it's fun.
Sure.
But our finance staff, Paul Bacher, Carol Tellefson, Karen Anderson, HR staff, some auditor treasurer staff that all help out with this audit, it is 98% of what they do. I mean, it's when Doug says they're bugging the staff, that is no joke. And not in a bad way or anything. It's everybody's got to do this. But everybody plays a role. And I think we forget that it takes up a lot of the time. And so I think that our staff do that is commendable, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for the audit to get done every year. And I just want to thank all the staff because this is a really important tool. So
Yeah, and go ahead. Commissioner. I was just gonna say, some of that stuff happened a long time ago. Karen called me one day and said, "Hey, do you recall the conversation?" I don't even remember today what it was about, but we were able to get to the bottom of what it was, and she could respond to you in the way that you expected. So that's not always that easy to do, to recollect what happened, some months ago. Commissioner Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From your point of view, as an auditor as well, but first off, kudos to management and all the staff involved in that. We're pretty lucky to have staff that we do. We're very lucky. And very positive, this whole thing. But going forward now, this next month, we're going to have to, and the rest of this month, look at finalizing our levy. And we've got a big increase, if you've noticed, coming up. And so wanting to look at if we do come in lower, are we financially, looks like we're pretty secure if we wanted to drop that levy a little bit.
Well, that's ultimately county management.
Yeah, I know. I just want to see where
we got to remain independent. But depending upon from looking at your financial position and the stability, I can't remember offhand. What is the percent preliminary set at? Amen. Keeping your eyes on the other side of the line too on expenditures. You can only go to the well so many times. I think I told it. Do you got time for a story? Did I tell last year? I can't remember about. I audited a city and they had water and sewer, and that city council felt so strongly that their rates were too high. They went like 14 years and never raised them, right? And then all of a sudden their infrastructure went, I could be on there, but it went in the tank, right? And then they had to increase rates to replace it. And the citizens were very upset. Oh my gosh, 45% increase. Oh, that's so much, which it is. But because of them previous 12 or 14 years of no increases, it made it hurt a lot more. So keep that in mind. But you actually bring up, you're working on the budget, and this year the audit was done the end of September, which can help with the budget process. And I think as a group, we're all hoping to move that timing up even a little bit more. So it would be, you'll have final numbers from the prior year when you get to maybe setting that preliminary levy. So I think that's something for all of us to strive for.
May I follow up?
Yes.
What I'm hearing from you then, we can look at it, but be cautious.
Yeah, that's a great.
Okay, yes. And I kind of
Exactly.
figured that, and I think we will be. So.
Yep.
And as part of that caution, three things come to mind, and what is it's coming up on our agenda here yet this morning. The Minnesota African American Family Preservation Child and Welfare Disproportionality Act is something that could cost counties a lot of money going forward. We're in the middle of or in the beginning, maybe more fair of a space study, and then paid family leave is going to be coming up here pretty quick. So all of those things, because they're on the horizon, we have to at least keep in mind about those.
Some of those programs are mandated.
Yeah.
And some are funded. Many times they're not funded. And so, but you still, if they're mandated, you gotta find the money someplace.
All right, other questions or comments? Well, thank you guys. Again, apologize for getting a little late, but
Well,
very good job.
we'll start tomorrow, or next year's out tomorrow.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Karen.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Good.
Karen Anderson, County CFO. And now you've gotten our audit report. The next step for us moving forward is to publish the financial statement. So I am here to request board approval to go ahead with publication of the financial statement.
So you hear recommendation from staff to publish the financial statement. I would entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Commissioner Gardner moves on the publication of the financial statement. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Julie Munson is going to present on the proposed non-statutory fees in the Laredo Anywhere Laredo contract. I'm sure you'll explain what that is.
Yes. Good morning, Julie Munson, County Recorder. I'm here today to ask approval for an updated agreement. Our land record software, Laredo Desktop, is sunsetting, and we are changing over to a web-based platform called Laredo Anywhere. Laredo Anywhere is a web-based browser version of Laredo, which enables users to utilize the service from any web-enabled device, such as a smartphone, to search, view, and print documents, and does not require a program download to the device. At this time, users can use either the desktop version or Anywhere version until the end of the year, when desktop will sunset. With the change in the software, this will also bring change in how customers will be invoiced. We will no longer be processing our land records invoices in-house. Invoices will be prepared through our software vendor, Fiddler Technologies, through Laredo Connect, which is going to be going live on Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. Laredo Connect is a web-based Laredo account management portal and offers the ability to manage multiple Laredo users and multiple counties in one spot. Access to all Laredo users' activity is in real time, viewing activity and printing activity, including document details. Access to charge invoices and/or escrow statements, the ability to set up their account alerts, and ability to make escrow deposits and pay charge invoices online. Including Candioi County, there are 18 counties that use the same land records software from Fiddler Technologies. I have viewed 9 other county agreements, and all have very similar verbiage and little variation to plan fees as to what Candioi County currently has in place. With the anticipated change to the Laredo Connect, I have updated our user agreement, and we'll have all users sign a new agreement. And in your packet, you should have a drafted copy of what that agreement is. The highlighted areas were where I made changes from the previous agreement to include updated terms. Plan fees will remain the same as when the current agreement became effective January 1st, 2019. So I'm asking approval from the board for 2 additional fees that were not originally included in the agreement. The first is if a previous online access agreement was made with Candioi County and terminated or canceled in the previous 12 months, a reactivation fee of $100 will apply to set up access again. And subscribers that maintain an escrow account shall maintain a balance of at least the minimum monthly agreement plan rate at all times. Subscribers shall maintain a positive escrow balance at all times, and failure to maintain a positive balance may result in the immediate disconnection of service without notice, and there will be a reconnect fee of $30. I did send over the agreement to County Attorney Shane Baker, and he has reviewed the agreement.
Two, you've heard recommendations from staff regarding the updated contract.
Mr. Chair, I also move to approve it.
Commissioner Byrd moves to accept the proposed updated contract on the Laredo agreement. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next, 2025 Child Welfare Juvenile Justice Screening Grant. Caroline.
Good morning again. Again, Caroline Kahn, Director of Health and Human Services for Candy, Ojai County. This morning is just a brief update to make you aware of our 2025 Child Welfare and Juvenile Justice Screening Grant amounts. The amounts from 2024 to 2025 did adjust a little bit on the decreased side. So in 2025, we anticipate a total of $91,573. And in 2024, we had the opportunity to receive $131,220. Just to make you a little bit aware of how the Child Welfare and Juvenile Justice Screening Grant is utilized, it targets children that are 3 months to 17 years of age that are not currently receiving mental health services or that have not previously been screened in the past 180 days. Specifically for children that are receiving child protection case management services or receiving guardianship or adoption case management through a child protective program, or in out-of-home placement within that 30-day period. So it's really an opportunity for us to help target kids that could benefit from mental health services and utilizing our partnerships like we discussed earlier today to help improve the mental health of our children overall. So again, another unique piece that we're able to utilize within this 2025 grant structure is how can we utilize some of these funds to impact some of our other programming areas. So of the 6 line items, one, it helps benefit our PACT local collaborative payment, as well as 4, help support our Woodland Center's purchase of service. We're able to offset some of our levy impact by utilizing some of these streams and brass codes. So just sharing a little brief update of how that funding comes into our county and impacts the work that we do with children.
Any questions? Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Caroline, the decrease in the funding is relatively substantial. Does that mean that there's a decrease in home placements or any of those impacts?
No, the decrease, to my understanding, is just that based off of the utilization of our screens. So as we're screening children, there could be a causal effect, but the state sets forth what they're going to appropriate to our program based off of the screens from the previous year. So there may not have been enough children that triggered the certain indicators, but I can follow back up with you on the specifics.
No worries. Thank you.
So in essence, that does seem like a less demand because you didn't do as many screenings.
I think that the screenings as to how they were facilitated maybe had some lack of consistency with some training pieces. So we've identified an issue and moved forward as to how we're going to do that differently moving forward.
So there must be a use it or lose it sort of approach to
Yep, and that's so last year we found ourselves with a lot of community impact dollars. So that Tumblr project, this was able to do that community outreach Tumblr project that we talked about last year. Which I am happy to report that every time I go into a school, I see those tumblers. So that's really a positive piece. And I always ask like the feedback. But so counties have been able to utilize those dollars creatively as a community outreach, and in order to help leverage the use of the dollars to show like, hey, we do have a need. We've really heavily invested in our staff time and training to utilizing this screen for its intended impact moving forward, but we had a little bit of a learning period.
Okay, and so that screening process didn't result in less demand or less clients. So did we make that up with the levy dollars, or how did we fill the gap there?
So really,
Given that-
really, there is no gap. It's just additional dollars that help support the work. So we might not have been coding it in that direct fashion, but the work was still being done. So we were still getting kids to the direct impact. It's just kind of helping ensure that that screening is moving forward and helping connect kids to services. And we haven't utilized the funds in the past to help leverage our local collaborative or some of our Woodland Center's brass codes in the past as well. So we're getting creative as to how we're putting it into our grant projects.
Commissioner Berg, did you?
Yeah, I'm not real clear. So there's no levy dollars, or additional dollars then? How do you fund those services? Just by the resources?
Well, we haven't used levy dollars for community outreach projects such as the tumblers in the past. So that was just a new opportunity. I suppose the levy impact would be offsetting some of the screening costs within our Case-Aid group staff time, but the Case-Aid staff time is still, they were doing other duties instead of this duty. So just re-education and coding that correctly in SSIS.
All right, so that is you're looking for,
Just, it was a brief update to just make you aware of the amounts.
Because Mr. Chair, yeah, the example you showed us here was the grant, and we dealt with that already. There's some signatures from September on this. What is that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to admit to a user error when it came through in DocuSign. I was trying to keep on top of our documents, and it went through sooner than bringing forward. So providing an update that it has been signed and approved. It's no different. It's just the funding amounts changed as the year previous.
Because we approved it before.
Yeah, it's the same. It's just the amount changed. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that and be transparent of those funding differences.
okay, thank you. Up next, Mr. Doobie, George Doobie, the Circle of Courage Youth Programs.
Hello, everyone.
Well,
Morning.
for the people watching and for the record, if both of you would state your name and who you represent.
Yeah, my name is George Doobie. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Minnesota Family Services.
You may have to get a little closer to the mic so that you do get recorded. Sorry about
It's okay.
I can't turn it up.
I want to waste your time, right? Because I know you're ahead of schedule. I'm teasing. My name is George. I'm Director of Greater Minnesota Family Services.
And my name is Steve Bashad, and I'm with Greater Minnesota Family Services as the Chief Programs Officer, and we're here to talk about our Circle of Courage Youth Program.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just a very fast flyover is again, thank you. Greater Minnesota, we're a nonprofit. I gotta speak louder, I guess. We are a nonprofit. There you go. And we've been at it for 32 years now. And started out with about 5 folks, and now we have a couple hundred staff serving half of the state of Minnesota. And that's we're not about trying to brag about anything. We're just we're really honored that we can serve so many at-risk children. It's been an amazing journey, and Steve has been with me for 32 years. I don't know why he stuck around that long, but he has. So, and he's going to give you an update on our Circle of Courage Youth Program, also known as Shelter Care. So thanks again.
Well, thank you for having us. One of the things I wanted to say is we sure do appreciate the partnership with our host county. We've been around for 27 years now.
Yeah.
Circle of Courage Youth Program has been around for 27 years. We were formerly known as the Shelter Care. We recently changed our name. So again, we've sure appreciated the 27 years of being hosted by the county partnership. So we are a duly licensed group home and shelter care by the Department of Human Services. So we can provide shorter term shelter care, stays for kids that need sort of a safe structured setting. And we can also provide a group home level of care that would be a little bit longer, somewhere between 6 months to a year. And the shelter care is usually between like 1 and 90 days. We serve boys and girls, and we can serve kids as young as 9 all the way up to 17 years old. And a couple of little updates for you that are new. Recently, we partnered with Essential Care to offer a psychiatric and medication management service with a psychiatric support person virtually, and they will also come on site if we need them. So that's a wonderful service because we focus on children's mental health primarily at this at our program, and that was always a piece that we struggled with, was to try to find good medication management and support, psychiatric support from providers in the community. So these individuals offer to do that for us, as well as bridge to the kids if they leave, their guardians and the children could choose to continue to work with our provider ongoing. So that's a wonderful thing, so they don't disrupt that much needed service. We also offer, like I said, we're mental health focused, so we also offer diagnostic assessments, individual, family, and group therapy, and we bridge our kids home whenever possible. Our therapist, our licensed marriage and family therapist, will try to work with the kids as they discharge and go back to their communities to help with a successful bridging back home. What else can I? Oh, we're actively pursuing right now too, offering possibly some chemical dependency support services. Our licensed marriage family therapist also licensed as an LADC, a licensed alcohol and drug counselor, and so we're hoping to incorporate some of those types of services into our mental health track that we're doing with our kids. Yeah. I can tell you, if you'd like, I can tell you a little bit about the kids that we serve from Kaneohe County. In 2023, we served a total of 6 children from your county, and their average length of stay was 9. And that's when we were offering something that we focused on truancy. So they were very, very short stays. In 2024, we served 2. That's year to date. We've served 2 children from Kaneohe County, and the average length of stay for those kids was 114 days because they were on group home tracks. So they were with us a little bit longer. And our total census for 2023, because we obviously serve counties outside of Kaneohe County, was 40 children, and with an average length of stay of about 72 days. And our total for year to date here in 2024 is 21, with an average length of stay of 120 days. We serve quite a diverse population of children. Latinx, Hispanic, we served in 2023 7 children. Indigenous, we served 8. Karen, we served 1. African American, 3. And in 2024, Latinx was 6. Indigenous was 4. Karen was 1. African American, 1. And then the other thing I wanted to tell you about is that we're very blessed to have a very diverse staff. We have staff members that represent the Somali community, the Hispanic community, Caucasian, African American, Indigenous, and LGBTQ+, which is really a blessing because that allows us to serve a lot of children in a very, I would say, culturally specific way.
And we've noticed that just in the past few years that we've been able to recruit more diverse staff to
All right, so does anybody have any, Commissioner Berg, I think I saw your pen go up.
Well, kind of, but yeah, you're real specific. But your program is, you have such a large program. Is it all located here in Kaneohe County then, or this is the home base?
Oh, yeah.
Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, well, thank you. I know time's of the essence. I know that, yes. We started in my home in 1992. Believe me, this will be fast. In 1992, but then we've had our offices housed here in Wilmer ever since. And right now we're over by the Holiday Inn. Over right next to, what's that one little gas station?
Casey's.
Casey's, yeah, we're in that building there. That's our headquarters, and then we have staff working in schools and early childhood and doing in-home throughout the state.
And you've been hosting our Circle of Courage program for the 27 years.
Yes.
It's been wonderful.
Yep.
So I had a similar kind of a question. So you have, getting back to the census, current census, you have 21, of which only a couple are from Kaneohe County. So what counties do you all serve? It says Greater Minnesota, but is that all 87 counties or
About half,
about half?
40 counties we serve.
And mostly in Greater Minnesota, and or does it
Yeah,
include the
that's-
metro as well?
That fits with the fits with the title Greater Minnesota. That's kind of been our mission. You know, children need services out here in rural. Yeah, out in rural Minnesota. So yeah, we're like from Brainerd down to Iowa, Mankato over to South Dakota.
And specifically regarding our Circle of Courage Youth Program, we can accept referrals from any county in the state.
And if they come from a long distance, how do you do that? Circle of Courage, is it by electronic media?
Yes. If they're traveling a long distance, well, obviously we would live to in person whenever we can, but then we have to resort to virtual kinds of family involvement and virtual staffings with the placement agencies as well.
Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just a comment. I've known you for a long time, but you've served a lot of children, not only in Canada County, but in our region. And we're lucky to have that resource here. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Corky. I've known Corky for about 40 years. Well, because he's obviously been in social services. So this is not a political statement. It's just a human statement. I've enjoyed all those years. I remember when he was a social worker and I was an in-home worker, and it's been fun to see that all that's transpired over all these years. And right now we're serving about 3,000 high-risk children every year. That's a lot of kids. So we're very proud. Chief Seattle stood proud for the people and humbly for us.
Well, thank you for that information, which will provide us with the background for what Caroline is about to present to us.
Yep.
So appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Do you want me to repeat who I am again?
Pardon me?
I feel like I've
In
repeated.
case somebody just tuned in, yep.
If somebody tuned in, I'm Caroline Kahn. I have the opportunity to serve as the Health and Human Services Director for Candy, Ojai County. Before you today, I have the host county contract. So as we just heard, we host the county contract that all counties throughout Minnesota have the opportunity to benefit from. This year, we have before you a staff recommendation of a 2-year purchase of service contract that contains a 4% for each year. Understanding that we have some catch up to do from previous, we sat down with Steve and Tegan with our supervisors and really went through the contract period and discussed the increased costs of providing this service from a room and board standpoint as well as a staffing. Really appreciating their intentionality on promoting culturally appropriate services. As you will see later in our presentation on MathPub, that will be a priority for us moving forward. So before you, I do have a 2-year contract to engage a 4% increase each year in 2025 and 2026 to benefit all of the counties as well as Candy, Ojai County.
So I assume you are
Recommended. Yep.
contract. So heard staff recommendation to approve a contract with Greater Minnesota Family Services for 2 years under the terms that were described.
Correct. And I'd just like to highlight, we're really moving intentionally towards that 2-year to balance our budgets, and we know what to expect for that second year because right now our budget was set earlier in the year, and here we are at the end of the year. So this allows us the opportunity to budget appropriately as we move forward. So that's, this was a 2-year contract previous, but intentionally we're trying to continue to move forward with those 2-year contracts to help cost stabilize for our planning purposes.
Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to accept this contract.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to accept sign the Greater Minnesota Family Services contract for 2025 and 26.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves on the Greater Minnesota Family Services contract. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
just a couple questions. Approximately what percentage increase is this for each year?
4% each year.
4%. Okay. And okay.
And I heard you say it, and I remember from, I think it was just last year, or was it even 2 years ago, that we had a little bit of catching up to do.
Yes, but let me follow up. What is the major driving force? I'm assuming it's personnel salaries.
That's a cost indicator. What Greater Minnesota also provides is that room and board. So they have the cost of insurance as well as like just over upkeep of the buildings. The food costs have increased. Overall personnel as well as those indicators that go into providing lodging and food for the youth that they're serving also play a factor into their rates.
All right, any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, you may move on to the Minnesota African American Family Preservation and Child Welfare Disproportionality Act discussion.
That is a mouthful. So, again, Caroline Kahn, I have the opportunity to serve as the Health and Human Services Director here for Candy, Ojai County. And today I just wanted to provide a brief update. I understand that you guys had some brief education at a recent AMC district meeting, but this is some important legislation that to pay attention to as we move forward. So today we're not going to really get super deep, but really provide a high level understanding of the areas I would like you to maintain keeping aware of as we move into another legislative session. So what is MAFPA? It is the Minnesota African American Family Preservation and Child Welfare Disproportionality Act, coined as MAFPA in daily conversations. It's a crucial piece of legislation that is aimed at addressing the disproportionate outcomes for African American and other disproportionately affected families within the child welfare system. The act seeks to prevent the unnecessary removal of children and ensure that families receive the support and resources that they need to stay together. This last act passed in the last legislative session. It is currently active in Ramsey and Hennepin County as well as DCYF, and there's some funding attached to that and is anticipated to be rolled out to the rest of the counties beginning January 1 of 2027.
So I can stop you just for a second. Ramsey and Hennepin sort of volunteered to be the pilot project for this thing. It was a difficult thing for all of the counties to undertake at one time. So clearly they have the most clients involved. So it made sense for them to say, yep, we probably should be the goats in this.
Yeah, it was really the diversity that drove Hennepin and Ramsey. I will say, Candy County, we did offer to be a pilot county because of the diversity that we do serve. We were not lucky enough.
This is kind of the model by the ICWA. And what happened?
There are some similarities between the two. I think it's really important for our sovereign nations that we don't couple them together, and that we've heard loud and clear in the last legislative session, but there are some similarities. And I think it's really important to just honor the fact that this act is really driven to help us transform the way that we work with families. And I think that's its overall intent. It's just how that eventually plays out is that will impact counties in the day-to-day work. So the fundamentals of MAFPA, if it's all right, I'm just going to use that shortened term. But also please remember that child welfare disproportionality is also included in there. It's to promote the best interests of African American and disproportionately represented children, promote the stability and security of families by establishing minimum standards to prevent unnecessary removal and disproportionately represented African American and disproportionately represented families. Improve the permanency outcomes by employing active effort standards. What's important to understand here is what the difference is between active and reasonable. And I was able to find a DHS promoted presentation from 2016 that really did a high level overview of that difference between reasonable. Right now, reasonable is saying, Administrator Baker, I'm going to use your name if that's all right. I'm working with her as a family and she might be experiencing housing instability. So I, as a social worker, am going to help connect her with resources that address her housing instability need. It is now, I have done my part in helping make sure that she is connected and able to access resources that help her be secure in finding housing. The difference under active is I now work with Ms. Baker and call the housing landlord. I work on paying that rent. I work on paying that security deposit and that ongoing monthly rent. I help move her in. I drive her around to pick the correct location. It's really that extra engagement of helping do alongside versus just reasonably connecting. Another example would be mental health appointments. Right now, I can say, Administrator Baker, you would benefit from receiving some mental health services. Contact Woodland Centers to help set up an evaluation and see what services they have that might be best. Under active efforts, according to the DHS recommendations, is I'm now calling and making that appointment. I'm picking her up, I'm bringing her to the appointment, and then I am returning her to home. So it's really similar work, just done differently in the way that we engage with families. And what's important to understand is how that will impact how our staff work with families that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis, as well as employing case review and reporting expectations, intended outcomes. The DCYF, the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, will also develop a council that will help steer the implementation of this act, as well as provide those annual indicators of what individuals qualify as that disproportionality affected families. It's anticipated in the application of this act that about 80% of Minnesota's caseloads would fall in MAFPA guidelines as they sit today. For Candy-Ojai County, based off of the socioeconomic factors, we're looking at about 98% of our families that this would likely impact. So the way that we will work with families is we're not going to look at the one child and say, you don't hit X, Y, and Z, so now you go on this path. It's going to be an all or nothing plan for our kiddos, so that we ensure that we're providing the appropriate level of care for all families within Candy-Ojai County. Also understanding that 98% are going to fall within this legislation as well. And then as mentioned, the cultural competency training. It's really heavily investing in the way that we have cultural competency ingrained in their staff onboarding, as well as ongoing education. The training for staff is required prior to or within the 6 months of working with our disproportionately represented families. They cannot do that work unless they're coupled with somebody that has had that training. What is interesting is that they are required to have the training available 2027, but the act also goes inactive on the same date. So as how that plays out, but it will involve us as an agency to really look as to how are we going to be providing this additional training to ensure that we're compliant with this portion of the act as well. So it's really, like I mentioned, transforming the way that we work with families. The overall goal is to keep families together, and I think that's been our priority and our mission for a very long time, but it will pivot in the way that we engage with families on a proactive level overall. I think that it's important through this legislation that we really look at reporter bias and engaging and educating our community as mandated reporters, that we're reporting on all concerns, not just those unintentional interpersonal biases that we all live with, and making sure that we're aware of those, and just being mindful as we report on instances as well. So Hennepin County provided an update. I believe it was at the AMC conference in September, where their leadership came and talked a little bit about how staffing will work. They're recommending about 5 families per worker, which will be a significant shift for how we work today. But to deploy active efforts in the way that it's hoping, 5 families is probably going to be the manageable amount. So we're really eager as to how does this play out in Candy-Ojai County. So our children's leadership team has come together to really discuss how we want to see this work. We're looking at the beginning of 2025 to inviting our community partners to the table, and we would invite you guys to join us in that conversation, and invite Woodland Centers and UCAP, Greater Minnesota, all of the partners that we're engaging in services and contracts with, to really educate them on the program, on the act itself, and how these are the needs that we're going to see us as a dependency moving forward, and how can we work as a community to address these so it doesn't just live within the county, and it's really a collaborative, collective effort to deploying these best practices for families in Candy-Ojai County as hopeful, as well as a mitigator, so we don't have to triple our staff load in order to be successful in this project as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Finance.
This is something that we could talk for a lot about this, because it sounds like the expenses are going to go way up on
There's a potential to have
implement
a pretty significant impact that we would be coming forward. And that's, I think, why we want to get ahead of the game and start having this conversation 2 years in advance.
Mhm.
So that way, when you're sitting on the UCAP board and you see that this is moving forward, you guys could help start strategic planning as to how UCAP could develop their services to meet some of these needs. And as you guys sit on Woodlands, this is another need. And how can they develop services to help meet some of these needs and really create it as a community fabric? To help offset that potential impact.
Okay, and what is the current workload per worker now? You said it'll take, one worker will be handling a caseload of about 5 families when this is implemented. What is it now approximately?
Approximately like anywhere from 10 to 14 families per worker, depending on the complexity of the cases.
Okay, and then are there any funds from the state that are going to help do this?
I appreciate your
I
optimism.
know the answer, but I want the public to know.
You want, at this point, I am hopeful that this legislative budget session will have this as a priority conversation. I am hopeful that the Legislative Budget Office did ask us to do a survey and let them know what this will look like. At this point, there is no definitive answer as to if anything, but it is important that our legislators become aware and engaged. We've been, talking with our local legislators about this ongoing and sharing that survey as well, and just trying to create awareness about this conversation, because this is it's going to move quickly and it's going to be transformational in the way that we serve families. Again, that's not a bad thing. That's a positive thing, but how do we do it stewardly and responsibly for all citizens?
Yeah, because most of this will probably be put on the tax levy, right?
There is at this point, that is the only plan.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that's how it will stay. But at this point, that is what is in front of us.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to piggyback off of Commissioner Anderson's comments, I've seen the survey that you answered, and the numbers are striking. I mean, I assume that we would be able to find a place for somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 new workers. But this is an ongoing first year hit. If the way you answered it in the survey, of nearly $8 million a year on the tax levy. I understand that you have to do a little bit of a tightrope walk here to stay in the good graces of DHS on this. But this is such an extreme mandate in terms of cost, and nothing for the counties on this in the way of state or federal or funding anywhere. This would be all on the backs of the local taxpayers. At this point in time.
At this point,
You don't have to answer that.
I can confirm
saying that.
To my knowledge, there's no discussion of the federal government stepping in to meet this need. So it will either come at the local impact or the state impact. Again, it is not saying that the work proposed is not accurate and appropriate work. It's just saying that we might be getting on the freeway without our tires. And we have to take some time. And I think that's important and I'm very proud of our team to say, like, hey, let's start this conversation now. And I've talked to the executive directors of a lot of our local partnerships to say, this is coming. We want to invite you to the table. We want you to think of ways that you can go after grants, because if we can get that 8 to a 6, that's a win. And how do we do that? And ultimately, how do we keep families from entering the system is the overall goal. And I think that helps uniquely position us as Candy Ojai County as Health and Human Services, because that's really where public health comes in that overall preventative strategies and working simultaneously together.
And I want to echo what you said. Your staff does yeoman work each and every day. I mean, literally, they impact and sometimes even save lives, in the work that they're doing. So, that's not where the issue is. The issue here is in another unfunded mandate from the state government. And I mean, we're looking at, this is like flying the airplane while you're building it. They're doing it with the Office of Cannabis Management. DHS is doing this in this mandate, and it's well-intentioned, and I think there are going to be some good outcomes come out of this. But show us the money. If you expect us to be your boots on the ground, state of Minnesota, fund this.
Commissioner Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I agree. Well stated. But some of the salaries, though, will be adding additional staff, and we don't know exactly how many, and it's going to be phased in. That's the good news too, if there was any good news to it. But the service is good ideas, and it's a good idea. We need these kind of services. Can we afford it, and how we go forward? But now, as the social worker doing these services, there's still some billable dollars that they'll get.
Yep, so
And
my,
so, what's that percentage roughly? You know, the 8 million that was thrown out, you know, as a possibility. Is that counting? Is that what's left over?
that's what's left over
Over.
after.
So
we
that's not
work on our
counting the revenue.
reimbursement. Yep. So
Oh,
we built that into our recommendation, and when I put that number in the survey of an overall levy impact,
okay.
I did account for some of that on an average basis. Of course, it changes based off of the type of work you're doing. So one area that we could engage in work for additional revenue recapture is ensuring that every family we serve does a mid-benefits application. Also the right thing to do, but that's a billable revenue recapture as well. So right thing to do that also pays off is always a good win in my book. But that's a different way of working. And how do we start building some of those systems to build a more robust recapture to help offset some of this moving forward? At this point, we would come with a phased in request, but there really isn't a phased in. I want to just address that from the state.
Really? Okay.
The state's point is that come the 27th of, or this 27th,
It's got to be.
excuse me, January 1st of 2027, it's an all or nothing. We as a county could choose to start that project in 2026 and say, okay, we're going to do half now and half in 27. So it's not a large piece. And we talked about going to the well and those incremental increases. As a county, we could choose to look at that, but that will be a recommendation to the board to consider at this next annual budget season.
In the interest of time, number one, and the original intent here was to give a high level, and we're getting in the weeds a little bit right now. So I'm going to ask that we terminate this conversation at this point and take a 5-minute break and try to get the rest of the agenda going.
Hold on.
Uh,
You can try it again.
Do that a little more gently. We'll reconvene the Kennedy County Board of Commissioners. Up next on our agenda is the resolution for supporting Operation Greenlight for Veterans. Trish Appledorn, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. Is it still morning? Yeah.
Yep.
Happy November 5th. Happy Election Day, huh?
Would you introduce yourself and who you represent for the record?
I am Tricia Appledorn. I represent the Candioi County Veteran Service Office. November 11th, we all know was Veterans Day, 1 week from yesterday. We are trying to get a resolution supported by the Candioi County Board, Resolution 2024-35, supporting Operation Greenlight for Veterans. So basically, the synopsis of this is resolved with the designation of the Green Light for Veterans. Candioi County hereby declares November 6th through the 12th of November a time to salute and honor the service and sacrifices of our men and women in uniform transitioning from service. Therefore, it further be resolved that an observance of Operation Greenlight Candioi County encourages the citizens and patriotic tradition to recognize the importance of honoring these who have made the immeasurable sacrifices to preserve freedom and displaying green lights in the window of their places of business or residence, November 6th to the 12th of 2024.
So you've heard Ms. Appledorn and the resolution 2024-35 recommendation. How do you wish to proceed on resolution 2024?
I would like to make a recommendation that Candioi County make a motion to approve resolution 2024-35 Operation Greenlight in support of honoring veterans of Candioi County and all veterans.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
Commissioner Dale Anderson moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds, and this is actually a NACO kind of a led project too. They encourage counties around the United States to all do this. So you've any comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion
Just
carries.
while I'm here and Veterans Day is next week, I just want to touch on a couple of events that's going on in Candioi County. Obviously, there's a ton of them. They will be listed on the Candioi County Facebook page. We have a list of all the events going on in the county, but I do want to touch base on Atwater. They have built a new Veterans Memorial, and they are having the opening ceremony Monday, Veterans Day, November 11th at 2:00 in the afternoon. So if any of you are available to make it there, that would be a great opportunity to support Candioi County and the veterans and all the work they've gone into building that memorial. Annabeth and I will be speaking on open mic, God help us, on November 8th on Friday. So you're not doing anything during that time frame. You can listen in, call in if you have any questions. And then we've been working closely with our advisory board, working on 2025 events that we can have for our veterans. And that is about it. We've been very busy getting new furnaces, new air conditioners, new roofs, all kinds of stuff going on in our office. So we've been busy and we like it that way. And I like it when they come in before it's 40 below.
All right. Thank you for that additional information. Up next, City of New London final payment. Ms. Rodens.
Chair, members of the board, Mel Odens, Public Works Director, Candioi County. Before you, we did in 2023, the City of New London did about a half mile of reconstruction, water, sewer, storm, paving, turf establishment, and through our municipal account, we participate in those costs. In fact, we pay for all the road costs and not the utilities. And so it's my recommendation to accept the project and pay the City of New London their final reimbursement request of $16,481.56.
You heard staff recommendation on the final payment for the New London project. I entertain a motion to approve that staff recommendation and payment.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gardner moves. Do I hear a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Berg seconds. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Thorson, we're getting caught up here. Or trying to.
I'll make it quick. Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Andrew Thorson, Facilities Maintenance Director, Candido County, here to seek authorization to make final payment on our heat pump project. And the final payment is $111,068.95.
And you're recommending that we
And
make
I
it.
am recommending.
Commissioner Thorson recommends final payment.
Thank you.
All right. Facilities Director Thorson recommends making it, he might be a commissioner or a mayor by a councilman by tonight, so. Make the final payment to Lake Country Mechanical in the amount stated.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. You said 111. Here it says 115.
Yeah, in the board request, it's 115,379. So do you just want to clarify that dollar amount then, Andy?
Yeah, no, here on the final payment app, the architect's certification states $111,068.95. I don't.
Wonder if we should clarify that before.
That was a different figure on the bottom left hand of the page.
You know,
It's the 111.
Corrected amount.
Yeah.
So you just would want to amend the corrected amount to 111,000.
Yes.
Odd number, I didn't. So do you want to repeat that number?
It does. The certified amount is $111,068.95.
So the motion would just have to be amended to that dollar.
we don't have a motion yet, so.
Whoever makes it.
So I'd entertain a motion to accept final payment in the amount stated by Facilities Director Thorson.
Mr. Chair, I so move with the amendment.
Commissioner Dale Anderson moves on to final payment. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. The chair will abstain from discussion and or voting in this matter due to a conflict. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right.
No, just kind of provide
Up next is the Canvas ordinance presentation, draft presentation from Chris Wenning.
Chris Weinish, Environmental Health Specialist, Candido County Public Health. So today we have an ordinance that we want to share for information that we've drafted. It's an ordinance regulating the retail sale and use of cannabis and lower potency hemp edibles in our county. Just a little bit of background on how we kind of got here. Minnesota Statute 342 requires local governments to register cannabis retail stores and also lower potency hemp edible stores. And then also it requires local government to conduct compliance checks. So in order for us to do that, we've written an ordinance that would manage that. And so prior to starting the writing of this, we had a meeting with Public Health, Canada County Planning and Zoning, Sheriff, and County Attorney to kind of discuss what we wanted in this ordinance, and also taking consideration of the last board meeting when cannabis was talked about. So I think this ordinance, it meets the requirements that the state puts forward for regulation or registration and compliance checks. Then it also protects underage people from purchasing these products in our county. So in your packets, you should have a draft ordinance, and I can kind of go through some of this. The highlighted portions in that are Well, first of all, I should just start by saying the majority of this ordinance are just mandates from state and statute. So that, a lot of that is what's in here. So I've kind of highlighted the parts that our county has gone above and beyond what statute requires. And so these are all the highlighted portions are sections where commissioners can make some decisions on what we do. So the first part of the ordinance, we just have definitions. So if we go to section 4, this talks about the registration process. And so before I get into that, I just wanted to give a little review of how this process would work overall. So the Office of Cannabis Management, they're going to be receiving applications from business owners that want to start up these businesses. And so once they get that application, they're going to go through their review process. Part of that is doing background checks on these people and just making sure they meet all the requirements of statute. And then the OCM, the Office of Cannabis Management, they're going to forward those applications on to the local government, which for us, we envision that being public health. Public health will take that application and forward that to Kansas County Planning and Zoning. And they're going to make sure that those applicants are meeting the zoning ordinance. Once they're done with that, they're going to get that back to us, public health, and then we will go through that application and make sure that it meets all the requirements of our ordinance. And part of that would be that we do a pre-registration compliance check where we're going out to the business and making sure that the parts of our ordinance, they're meeting those. So that's kind of the overall process of that. So starting in section 4 with the registration, 4.4, this is just kind of the highlighted part there is stating, what I just said. Those applications are going to go to zoning to make sure that we meet all our zoning requirements for our county. And then 4.5, I talked about the compliance checks prior to the registration. That's it. That's what 4.5 is. Then going down to 4.11, the maximum number of registrations. So state statute allows county government to have a minimum of registrants that would equal 1 registration per every 12,500 residents. We have to have at least that many. In our group, when we met, we were thinking about the last board meeting, and there was discussion about the number of registrations that we should allow, and we felt that the board was leaning towards that 1 per every 12,500 residents. So that's why we have that in 4.11. Getting down to the fees, section 5, we left that out of the ordinance, so that would be just something similar to what we do with our tobacco fees for tobacco resale licenses and our food, pools, and lodging. We'd like to keep that out of the ordinance, so that way we can change those each year or every couple of years and not have to open that ordinance up. It's just a cleaner way of doing it. Section 6, these are some reasons that we would deny registration. A lot of these are from statutes, but 6.1D, the applicant fails to provide proof of installation of an electronic age verification device that utilizes a scanning technology or other automated software-based system to verify the person is 21 years of age or older. So what that is basically is like those card scanners, and when you go into a gas station, people are buying tobacco products. Those clerks are taking their IDs and scanning them in a machine. That's just another layer of protection, so we're not selling to underage people. So it's just, go through this later on here in section 7, but it's just another tool to prevent underage sales. And so that's something when we do those pre-registration compliance checks, that's something we would be looking for in those compliance checks before they're registered. And then 6.3 G, or not 6.3, 6.1G. Again, it talks about part of that process is going through the zoning ordinance and making sure that they meet the requirements. Section 7, prohibited sales. Again, like vending machines, stuff like that. You can't have vending machines part of statute, but we did add a couple other things in 7.1C and 7.1D. Movable places of business would be prohibited. So that's only fixed location businesses may sell approved products and medical cannabinoid products. So that way we don't have trailers, trucks, stuff like that, like we do with food trucks going around to parks and beaches and stuff like that. We have to be at an actual fixed location. And then also by means of delivery sales. It's just really hard to do compliance checks when they can deliver. We have a college in town. We have 19, 20-year-old kids there. This is just another way to protect the underage. 7.3 age verification. So in here, this kind of talks about what the requirements are for these clerks. So when somebody comes in to buy this, we're saying that if they're looking at to be 40 years old or younger, they need to be carded. And then in B and C, it breaks down the process of that. So it's a 2-point process. They're going to have to actually do a visual look at that ID and check to make sure they're over 21. And then also they're going to have to do a swipe of the ID on their automated device to make sure. So that's 2 different steps to make sure that they're over 21. 7.5 hours of operation. Statute allows these businesses to be open. I think it's 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning. We were looking to be consistent with liquor sales, off-sale liquor, and so we put those hours from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. to be consistent with that. Down in section 8, temporary cannabis events. So these are events that are 4 days or less that the owners can apply for. So they're just like these little pop-up events. And it goes through really the same process as the brick and mortar places. So they're still going to have to go through the OCM for an application. The OCM is going to send that to us, and we go through the review. Under 8.2, we have Canada County shall not register any temporary cannabis event which seeks to host a temporary cannabis event on any property owned or operated by Canada County. So this way, these pop-up events, you wouldn't have them at the local beach, you wouldn't have them at the parks that the county may own, or the county fair, for that matter. And then moving to section 11, talks about penalties and stuff like that. So with 11.2 in the penalties, these are the penalties that we would have for compliance checks, similar to what we have for tobacco compliance checks. We really just went through the same thing. The only difference is the penalty amounts are a little bit higher because our tobacco ordinances needs to be updated. They should be raised really to be similar to this. So really the first violation for selling to somebody under the age of 21 is going to be $600. The second violation within 36-month period is going to be $1,000. The third violation within 48 months is $2,000, and then you'd also have your license suspended for 30 days. And then if you had a fourth violation within a 48-month period, your registration would be revoked. So, and then the final thing I would just like to point out in here would be section 12. So use in public places. The statute does have some wording in there on this, and it's a little bit loose. There's some gray areas, so we went ahead and put it in our ordinance so that there's more clarity to it. So no person shall use cannabis flower or products or lower potency edibles or other products unless it's basically on any public place or public accommodation. And then we define that in the definitions, what a public place is. So there's more clarity on that compared to what the statute is. So that's kind of general overview of that. We do need to have an ordinance in place by the first of the year so we can register these places, do compliance checks. So in order to do that, looking at the calendar, we would request that a public hearing date be set for December 3rd. We could set that date today because that gives us the time to get that in the paper for our notice and everything. We need 10 days notice for that, so we're kind of in a time crunch.
So the Chris did a great job providing this overview before our work session here at 1 o'clock. A little detail of that too is you have a draft ordinance in front of you. We'll be also discussing that at the work session this afternoon. The reason to set the public hearing date is, like Chris just said, to give us a little more time to get that date information sent to the papers. We will also have to bring the ordinance back to the board on November 19th for the board to approve the ordinance that would be discussed during the public hearing. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Not that we're hopping through any steps, but I just wanted to be transparent that this draft then would still have to be brought back on the 19th for the board to approve for the public hearing date.
17th.
No, on the 3rd.
Oh, yeah.
So, looking at our calendar, we have a county board meeting at 4 p.m. that day. And truth and taxation at 6 p.m. So when would this public hearing take place?
During the regular board meeting?
At the start of it.
Sure.
But we never know how long public hearings go and how many people show up for them. I'm wondering if public hearing shouldn't be on a separate day.
I would rather just do it at the same meeting. Same day.
Probably work on a really a short agenda then for that first meeting if we do it.
We do run the risk that if there's a lot of public people or people involved in the public hearing that can, because I don't think we can shut down public hearings, can we? We can't limit them.
We can put a time limit on these.
But if there's 30 people that want to speak and we give them each 3 minutes, I mean, we have to allow that.
I thought we can put a time limit on
Well, time limited per speaker, but that's
Not-
per
so
shutting down the number.
Right. So we don't know how long, it's hard to predict how long a public hearing would take.
But truth and taxation just can't start before 6 p.m. So if the public comment period were to go for an hour, you'd still be fine if you started the TNT meeting at 6:30 or 6:45. That meeting typically in the past has been about a half hour. I go through the budget presentation. You don't approve the levy that night, but that takes about 20 to 30 minutes. Our assessor's office is present to answer a lot of the questions that are coming in, and typically this is, it's too late for them to, the public to get their taxes fixed for the next year. So typically that meeting, the TNT, has been about 20 to 30 minutes. And so I do believe, I think if we were to schedule the public hearing date for December 3rd and put it on at 4:30 or 5, allow an hour time, that should be sufficient.
Doesn't allow much for regular business that day, half hour. I'm fine with it. I mean, just understand the risk we're gonna run that if there's a lot of public input that we might not get done.
I don't foresee there to be that. It's not going to go beyond an hour. I mean, I'm just thinking back about some of the other ordinances that we've come up with, like the clean indoor air ordinance that we have for Kennewick County. I mean, at those we've had maybe 2 to 3 people that have spoken. A lot of this ordinance is stuff that's from statute, so there's not a whole lot we can change about that.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Yes, and I think we should also get the message out too, that the public, we would like to hear from them, individually. They're more than happy to listen to anybody from our district, or if they wanted to contact us to get as much information ahead of time, and from the other businesses and agencies too.
And I have some more questions, but they probably are better for this afternoon session. So does somebody want to make a motion on the public hearing?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we set the public hearing date for December 3rd. We have to have more
Time.
I would put it right away, is what I would do.
4 p.m.
4 o'clock, 1 or 4, yeah. And do I have to have any more on this motion? Is that good enough?
Probably list location, although that's obvious.
The location would be here at the Health and Human Services building up in the boardroom, I guess. Or do we need, would it be in here or would we have to be downstairs? Up here, so.
So we have a motion on the floor to set a public hearing regarding the cannabis ordinance, Kennewick County Cannabis Ordinance, set for 4 o'clock on December 3rd, 2024 in the Health and Human Services County Boardroom. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks. We'll see you later this afternoon or shortly, I guess it is. All right, so last item on the regular agenda, I believe, is at our board operating workshop that we had in July with Dave Unluck. He highly recommended that that the board consider adopting board operating guidelines. And there are plenty of examples existing for that. In fact, I think Kelsey, Administrator Baker, found one in the files for from another county. And I am proposing that on November 19th, that's our next regularly scheduled board meeting, Administrator Baker will be leaving the meeting relatively early, as today goes at least, to catch a plane. And we have a lunch invite from the Soil Water Conservation District at 12:30. So I'm proposing that we use that time between adjourning the regular meeting, about the time that Administrator Baker leaves, and we get our businesses out of the way, and then we work until a few minutes before 12:30 when the luncheon over at Robbins Island takes place. So doesn't add anything to your schedule. It fills the gap. We have lunch being served by the Soil and Water Conservation District. So, and that'll be a work session. I would prefer to do it in the conference room around a table as opposed in here, but I'm open to whatever.
Just a comment. My one concern would be that I would not be present for that, which I do think is important. To be present for the discussion, but it's the wishes of the board.
Well, it's kind of a board function, and we do need a recorder. So if Melissa would be available to do the recording, that would be. And then this is just probably the start. Most of it is going to be boilerplate, and we would probably not get done in one session. And when we do get done, and if we adopt something, we'd have to make sure that the county attorney looks at it for final approval.
Mr. Chair, so are we looking at then that we probably need 2 work sessions on this as well? To address
I'm
this?
guessing, but
And then,
we don't know for sure.
yeah,
So no action required. It's just part of our next board meeting. Administrator, what time do we have here?
12.
Order the 12. Our this afternoon meeting. We have lunch coming in, I understand, right? So administrative updates, calendars. Are you guys ready for reports? Report out. So we'll start with Commissioner Gardner. I see he's reaching for his calendar and going back to what we've done since the last board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just need to find the right week. Hang on here.
It was a long time ago, the 15th.
Yeah. Yep. Since our last, a couple of things I want to touch on. Going into next year, we have a couple of committees that at least a couple of us, and I think in one case all of us, serve on. The West Central Mental Health Housing, which is a nonprofit run by Woodland Centers indirectly. But it's a separate entity from Woodland Centers. Past practice has been to have all 5 commissioners on that board, which meets quarterly. It is a nonprofit function, We had a conversation earlier in the year questioning why all 5 of us needed to be there, among other reasons for concern. It's potentially a bad look for this board to have all 5 of us in a meeting that is not required to be publicly noticed. And so the bylaws have since been changed, effective the last meeting on the 17th of October. And there will be 2 representatives from this county board on that body going forward. We'll have to make that choice at or prior to our reorganizational meeting coming up at the first of the year. And then Woodland Center's board has also made a change to their bylaws. Right now, they're up to 2 county representatives. Typically, have been both commissioners, and that is going to be changed to 1. And then there's going to be some additional members of the public that are going to be appointed by Woodland Centers to that board. And currently, Commissioner Berg and I serve on that board, and certainly he has the longevity on that board and the institutional knowledge, and so I would anticipate that he would be the representative for the county moving forward. That is for information only. Let's see. We all took part in the AMC District 6 meeting at Montevideo last week. A lot of different legislative updates, and we voted on potential priorities for AMC to pursue. Certainly, we'll be selecting those top 5 at the annual conference next month, but mental health is probably the #1 priority. Mental health services for folks, including children and justice-involved folks. And that is really becoming a big concern, a big cost driver, obviously, for counties. And so we're going to be seeing that coming forward as a issue. And just looking here, attended the Convention and Visitors Bureau board retreat last Tuesday, and looking at some possibilities there, mostly a review of funding for that organization and what their mission is, and potential for maybe some either remodeling or of current facilities, or potentially looking at a different facility for that organization. And there'll be more to come on that. And that is, I think, going to be the end of my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Garner. Commissioner Teal Anderson.
Just a few things. We had a library meeting on the 17th, and always kind of interesting to see what's going on with the library, new people and people that are past, that are retiring off. The fall district meeting, like Mr. Gardner said, was interesting to go to that one. I had Ditch 27 meeting on the 28th. Continue to look at that issue. We actually got a person from Ducks Unlimited. Give me 1 second. I don't want to screw up a person's name. John Lindstrom is the Ducks Unlimited representative that's going to help with that project, to help us do some engineering and see what would work best. The thing that was kind of interesting with that meeting was, if you do a big enough body of water that you hold back, you can actually classify it as recreating a lake. And if we can get 55 acres of water held back, that would be a classification of a lake, and that would give us a lot more funding and a lot more opportunities. So that's what they're kind of looking at right now, is if something like that would be possible. So optimistic. There were some issues that we found
going up ditch 27 that are a little alarming. There's some areas where there's not been taxes paid and there hasn't been any ditch taxes paid also. And that's something that they're going to be looking at to how to remedy that and try and get that back on the tax roll and on the ditch part too. So kind of interesting, some things you never think about and never understand, but you start to learn about. The other thing that we had was we had our CEC meeting yesterday for the county extension, and are looking at one of the possibilities that we met with Kelsey beforehand with Trish from the extension to have our support staff go up to a full-time position to help out so that that office can be open more days, because right now it's not open every day. And people always call and they say, well, they're not open. Nobody answers the phone. So this would give an opportunity for that 4-H office and extension office to be open 5 days a week. So looking at that, and that'll be part of our decision on our levy and stuff when that point comes. But just wanted to let you know we did meet on that. Dwayne was there too, so if you want to say something more about Dwayne when you do report outs, that's fine. Yeah, that's all I really have.
Thank you. Speaking of Commissioner Dwayne.
Yep. So I had kind of a busy couple weeks. UCAP had a groundbreaking for 8 units that they're going to build in Wilmer. It kind of deals with people that are down on their luck and they end up being homeless and they need a place to stay. Prior to this, well, it's still going on. A lot of times they end up putting them up in a hotel temporarily for like 30 days at max. And so this it'll actually kind of save them money, I think, in the long run. And it's a kind of a good thing to help people get back on their feet. I know there's been stories, I think one time they had where the kid, they put a family in a hotel and the kid wandered out in a parking lot and stuff. So it wasn't the best kind of situation to have at a hotel. So I think this kind of gets them back on their feet a little bit, and they can kind of watch over them. And it isn't just like they get a nice place to stay for free. They get a few days to kind of clean themselves up and get back, rested up, and then they start checking up on them, and then they start placing, kind of things that they want them to kind of start doing. Maybe they got to start looking at a resume and start applying for a job and different things like that. So it's a good thing that they are doing that. It should be, they're hoping to have it up and running, those units, sometime in January, provided weather and everything cooperates. So that's kind of a nice thing to hear about.
Excuse me, did you say where that?
Yeah, so it's over by kind of over by.
In Kansas County.
Yeah, it's in Wilmer here. Yeah, so I do have.
Do other communities that UCAP serves have a similar type of?
They are building. There is another one. I can't think of where that's going to be going up, but they do have. There is another one. I think they're kind of working on or have done. I'm not really sure how far that is along on that. But
sorry to interrupt your rhythm there, but
yep. So this one's over. Kind of on County Road 23 or just off, but it's over by the bus barn there. So, but then. I had that CCT meeting, just kind of working on tightening up some ways how we can kind of look at things. We only meet quarterly, and we felt that maybe we should have kind of a finance executive board. Right now they have an operations board where they kind of hear about employee complaints or things that concern more the employees. But we also thought we need to have a way to look at financials maybe on more of a monthly basis. So we're looking at maybe revamping how they kind of have their meetings or who's on the boards and stuff. So we're going to be looking at that. I went to a Central Minnesota Jobs and Training event where they came out and they were, just touring all the different locations where they kind of have office space that kind of help people find jobs and training. So that was on October 21st at Ridgewater College, and that was kind of fun for me to go see how it is, how Central Minnesota Jobs and Training operates in Kansas County. We also had our AMC District 6 meeting. We all went to that. I had the Veterans Advisory Board meeting last week, and that's where Trish Appledorn and Annabeth, they all discussed about I guess we're going to try to set up some bylaws or something. They've never really done that. They just kind of get together, and so we're going to be looking at in the future here doing something with bylaws and how to kind of run the Veterans Advisory Board a little more formally, and who should be on that board, and how they appoint people. So had a Economic Development Commission broadband committee meeting. Showed up a little late. We changed our location and ended up being a little late, but everybody kind of waited for us. I think that was partly because we maybe didn't have quorum. I'm not sure, but a lot of good news with that. We've had a lot of success in the last 4 years. I don't know, Commissioner Imdeck, did you want to talk about it, or do you want me to talk more
Go
about
ahead.
it? Okay, so we've had a lot of grants. So we've had a couple disappointments. The latest disappointment is Lake Lillian Township did not get their grant, but there was a lot of competition for that grant. I think it was like 78 million in dollars worth of applications, and they only had $27 million of grant money available. So it was about a 1 in 3 chance that they would get it. And unfortunately, the second time around, they still haven't gotten it. But Genesee Township and Candy Ojai Townships both were given grants or awarded grants. So they will be, I guess they're kind of staking in Genesee Township right now, but they have some engineering stuff that has to be done. And for sure they'll be starting in the spring and get fiber to the homes there. So in the last 4 years, we've been awarded about 15.7 million for state grants on this. I believe it was a border to border one. And then we've used local matching funds, which would be like township and county funds. Basically, 100% of that was our ARPA dollars, and $14.8 million there. So we've had about 30.5 million total in federal and state and local money that's been used towards putting fiber to the premise, but that doesn't include what the providers have, put into it. So the grant total with the local money, it's basically going to be about 2,459 locations that'll be served, and so it's really good to see that after 4 years, and we've really made a lot of progress. Now we're going to have a little bit of a pause, but kind of good to see. I don't know if I should do any more. I got a lot of meetings, so I think I'll just leave it at that. So I've touched on a lot of issues. So
Okay. Trish Burke.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I had a Prairie Lakes Youth Program meeting. Not too much to update on that. We went over the budget and increases that we may have for next year, and you'll be hearing more about that later. Also, some talk about Dr. Booth and Administrator Baker going to Washington, D.C., and that's really a good deal, and see what we can get some funds, additional funds from the federal government to move forward with different plans for the Prairie Lakes Youth Program. I had a Woodland Centers meeting most of the afternoon. Woodlands Housing Board meeting, Woodlands Finance Committee meeting, and the general monthly meeting with Commissioner Gardner. There's been a couple retirements we're part of. I also had an EDC board meeting. It was our first board meeting that we had in the new location, and that went really quite well. And as usual, a lot of things to touch on, but really nothing to report at this point to this board. I did have a couple other meetings, major meetings actually, that weren't official committee meetings, but I'm on a committee that I think you're aware of too, about giving out grants. And that took up 2.5 full days. And that's for the whole Southwest region, but it impacts several counties here. So it was good to have some input on that. And so even though I wasn't officially representing the board, it really kind of fit in what we work with and who we work with. And I had also the district meeting with the rest of the commissioners, and I attended a 2-hour Zoom meeting, and surprise, on AI. And I won't get into it now, but I'd like to share some stuff, and I think we should have some more discussion as it as a board about that going forward in their needs, their community. That's it.
All right, Administrator Baker.
Um, the December 3rd meeting, instead of having the regular board meeting during the day at 9 a.m., we're proposing it at 4 p.m., which the board seems okay with that. And the Truth and Taxation meeting will be at 6 p.m. So we notice that now on the agenda. We'll put it on the November 19th agenda as well. And then the AMC conference, our space study is kicking off, meeting with the departments next week. So we'll have world architects and engineers out here visiting with each departments that's affecting. Some of the work that prior to the space study is being completed in the lower level of this building. So the staff are really excited that we're moving forward, and the feedback already from the surveys is really positive. So I think WOLD will be able to provide an adequate recommendation after they conduct the space study. As Commissioner Berg said, Holly Booth and I, the director at Prairie Lakes, will be going out to DC November 19th to visit with some representatives out there regarding advocating on behalf of Prairie Lakes youth programs, and also Candioi County in general will be kind of continuing the conversations regarding when the other commissioners and Mel Odens were out there a few months ago. So we'll continue the conversations regarding opportunities and resources that we have in Candioi County. And I think that's it, other than I do feel that that work session on the 19th, I would like to be present just regarding some information that would be included. But if you're going to have 2 work sessions, I understand.
Sure. Yeah, and a lot of it's going to be boilerplate, so we should be able to, anything that has any in-depth conversation requirements, we can always do it at a separate time. We're just running out of time. So on the 21st of October, we had a monthly meeting with our federal lobbyists in reference to what Administrator Baker just got done referring to the trip to Washington. On the 24th, we had the EDC Joint Powers meeting. The 25th, already mentioned, was the District 6 meeting, and then I attended Corinne Torkelson's retirement party downstairs, which was well attended after many years of dedicated service from Ms. Torkelson. On the 26th, if you can believe this, I took part in the Ludefist Supper at Faith Lutheran Church. I thought it was noteworthy for this German to take part in the Ludefist Supper. The 28th, we had a facilities committee meeting, already mentioned the Norway Games Lake meeting, but we also had the Glacier Lake Sanitary Sewer and Water District meeting. Notable out of that meeting is that the study, feasibility study for extending the Glacier Lakes reach out towards Norway Games, Andrew, Tepetonka, is going to require quite a bit more discussion. Last Friday, we had the AMC board meeting. Largely, it was a Zoom meeting. Largely, the discussion was had to do with the increase in fees, and then also the priorities for the upcoming legislative agenda. And the executive board and the staff will be choosing the priorities for the upcoming session. And then broadband committee, we're going to take a 2-month, as Dwayne says, 2-month pause. No, in our meetings, we won't meet till February, or because there really isn't that much to talk about right now, because there's some things we're just waiting for things to develop. Other than we have some unspent ARPA dollars that were dedicated to broadband that we want to, that they're going to bring a recommendation to the board to secure funding in the future for opportunities that come up. There was a line extension program award in the Atwater area that allowed for some more services to go in through that line extension program, which is in addition in a separate fund other from the border to border grant. And then yesterday we had a Highway 23 Coalition Projects Committee via Zoom, and that is it. Other than to remind everybody to vote if you haven't already done so. So with that, we will adjourn.